Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down.
Alright, here we are, folks.
Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we're gonna let it away. Tonight, we're gonna let it away. Tonight, we're gonna let it away. Just like the sunrise, we're gonna let it away.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that since Simon's down in Boulders, folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa. Hey folks, welcome back to the program. My apologies. The buffering is not on your end. The buffering is on my end. I have no idea what's going on. I keep testing my internet speeds, and I'm getting half of my download speed and 1/7 of my upload speed. The problem is that that's not proving to be enough. In just a moment, hopefully, I'll be able to get more upload speed, and hopefully you can stick with me a little bit longer. Please be patient. Please be patient for about 10 minutes. So I won't launch into the news until after those 10 minutes because I think that problem will be solved. I don't know why this is happening. I pay for an awful lot of internet and I'm not getting it here. So these companies can get away with this nonsense, not providing a service, because by the time you reach a customer service rep, you know, the things are over. There's nothing you can do about it. But anyway, hopefully this will pick up shortly. Give me a few moments there. And my apologies for the frustrations many of you are suffering. I'm also suffering that problem right now. I'm seeing that there is buffering on my end watching the stream. So please be patient. Give us about 10 minutes, and I believe the problem may be resolved within the next 10 minutes or so. Let me say hello to everybody in the chat as we get started here. We've got Myra Page, Dylan Combrick, Vilma Erasmus, Brian Lawrence, and Garrett Gillich. What else? John Huchin is here from Arizona. Trevor Bush is in. And then Brian Lawrence says... the sky rat's pheasant has started to eat the food too. What the heck are you talking about there? And then John Jarvis, anyone else watching the 3-hour Israeli statement this morning? I didn't watch it. I did read the transcripts of it, and I've got a lot to talk about that. Hang on, folks. We'll hopefully get there shortly with this improvement. Give me a second here. We're almost, I've got multiple things going on here, and that might be what's causing part of the problem, but it shouldn't normally cause this problem. Vilma listened to a short clip about it. Okay, and Peter John Wust says, good evening. Welcome to you, Peter. Good to see you there. The opening statement is Israel ICJ was great, clear, a lot of misrepresentation by the South African side. Absolutely, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, I should be experiencing no difficulty now. Let's see if that's the case. Are you guys, is the buffering over yet? I hope the buffering's over now. It should be over. Let me just double check my speeds and see what's going on now here. And reload the speed. I'll do a speed test here and see if that's improved. Okay, well, at the moment, nothing. Well, my download speeds are back. There we go. It looks like they've improved significantly, not where they're supposed to be. Now they're going back down. So give me a second. I'll check the upload speed, and hopefully we'll be okay. As I said, this shouldn't be happening. I pay a lot of money for a service that's not being provided. Yes, now I'm back up to about 20 megabytes per second, so we shouldn't experience any more buffering. So thank you for being patient, folks. It didn't take quite 10 minutes, more like 5 minutes since I asked you to be patient. Trevor says, I thought the opening in Israel was great, but the misrepresentation by South Africa was there. Gerald Lazarus is here. Nexus of Thought is back. Hey, Nexus. Read that support for Israel in South Africa is highest among Australians. No, I suspect the support for Israel in South Africa is highest amongst Jewish South Africans. Yeah, Vilma, the buffering should be over now, hopefully. And what else? Lee Roberts is here. Hey, Lee, how's it going? Buffering me, but the tower is just coming out. No, it's not. The buffering was not on your end. Well, you may have buffering on your end, but the problem was on my end, so my apologies for that. Anyway, I'm running the Webb Ellis collection here for the 2023 World Cup. This is one of those ones I got 70% off. Very nice, high quality, all embroidered. Cool beans. Thanks for being patient and sticking with us, folks. Yeah, we're up to 40 viewers now and got 28 likes. Don't forget, we've got Rugby Ascendant tomorrow. We've got the Bulls playing as well as the Stormers and then the Lions. On Sunday, it's the Cheetahs. 2-0 in the Challenge Cup, and we'll see if they can take it to 3-0. I hope they can. They'll be playing at home, except home won't be in Bloemfontein. It will at Toyota Stadium. It will be at Amsterdam. Yep. All right. So John says 10-4, and then John says 5x5. So we've got it. Okay, so the buffering is done. Apologies for that, folks. Again, I do appreciate your patience. I can't control it. Think about this, though. Think about where we're at today. Over 20 years ago, approaching 30 years ago now, Mark Cuban became fabulously wealthy because Yahoo executives were desperate to latch on to what they thought the future would be, which was streaming video. Well, they were right. That was the future, but it was about 15 years too soon because the compression and the bandwidth weren't there to compress the video, to come up with the algorithms with the codecs, and the bandwidth to distribute that stuff wasn't there. Well, now we stream all the time. Roku, Netflix, everything under the sun. Disney, Hulu, all this stuff, and this sort of thing, live streaming, broadcasting around the world, courtesy of platforms like this. And think about the complication of every moment that I'm speaking, my image and my words are being captured by this microphone, by that camera. They're being sent through my motherboard and my computer, the memory processing that, breaking it into zeros and ones, transmitting it through the hardwired cable in my computer to a modem over there, which goes out to a junction box on the corner here on the street. That gets transmitted to a distribution center, and those packets are sent to YouTube, and then YouTube sends those packets to their main servers in different countries around the world, and then you draw from that, all in near real time. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen, the complexity of that, the human achievement in that. And by the way, that's all America. Nobody else can take credit for that. We made that all possible, bringing goods to the world. Human goods. Anyway, also lots of bad, plenty of bad actors on the internet. But the point is it's a force for good. And just think about the complexity of that. That's just amazing when you think about that. And I haven't even talked about the security layers are necessary. All the different protocols are necessary. The IP protocol network, the whole hypertense markup language that facilitates you having a link to click on. It's just absolutely amazing stuff, folks. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. Israel, of course. I've just had a video, and I think that might have been what was interfering with the buffering at first. I put a video on a TikTok. For those who watch me on TikTok, you may want to go watch that video. It's about 8 minutes long, and it talks about this situation in particular. I will record a video after this broadcast about South Africa, Israel, and the ICJ, but I'm going to focus specifically on Ronnie Lamola, South Africa's Minister of Injustice. We'll talk about him. All right, Sue Walsh is here. All right, it's better. Helen Rich. Word most used today is confused. How so? Who's confused, Helen? Who's confused by what? Still got that cough, folks. Not going away. I saw a doctor 2 days ago. Gave me some stuff to use, but it ain't having an effect yet. Hopefully it will have an effect. There's Erica. Good to see Erica again. And she's chatting with her son. Well, hello, Justin. Howdy. How you doing? Good to see that you're in the room, and I hope things are going well. Okay, so I don't know if she's still chatting with her son. She was chatting with him. That's why she was late. Who's driving? Who's driving? Anyway, so there's problems with this whole thing. First off, the legacy media are not even remotely objective at this, as we expected. If you read the live blog coverage from Kanana Hunter and Catherine Mound on News 24, unfortunately, it delves into opinion and their so-called analysis, in which Kanana Hunter says that Israel or South Africa presented a brilliant case and a well-prepared case. No, they haven't. Their case is nonsense. And let me just give you two examples of that. So this is Ronnie Lamola, okay? No snow here, John. No snow here. But clouds today. Yesterday was a sunny day. Wound up getting 22 kilowatts of power generated from the solar panels yesterday. It was pretty good for a winter day. Today, I don't think I'm going to get any. In fact, it probably got about few hundred watts here. Let me take a look. The sun is obscured today, so I don't think I'm going to get much juice today. Yeah. Well, actually, no, that can't be right. Is that right? I think that's from yesterday. Hang on. No, that's right. It says 2.88. I'm actually surprised at this hour that I've got nearly 3 kilowatts an hour. There wasn't much sunlight. There was some this morning, but it's been covered up by cloud cover now. So, L my 5 pence. Thank you for your membership. Says, thought it was longer. Thought what was longer, L my 5 pence? Oh, you mean the snow? Yeah, so let me go to the Ronnie Lamola, the two problems with this, which will be detailed in a video. I'm just going to mention briefly here. He says the scale of the actions are reminiscent of the Rwandan genocide 30 years ago. Well, that's just silly on its numbers. Look, not to diminish the death of anyone, especially an innocent civilian who's not associated with the criminal, terroristic crimes against humanity, war crimes committed by Hamas. In 1990, Rwanda had 7.1 million people. In 1995, a year after the genocide, 6 months after genocide, the population was 5.5 million. That's a decline of 1.6 million people. Now, the reason for that, 850,000 people were butchered in a genocide to kill the Tutsi and Hutu who were tied to them, and the rest of the people fled to the Congo. That's why the population dropped by double. So 1.6 million. That represents 22% decline in the population from 1990. 22%. And actually, the number in 94 was probably a lot higher than 7.1 million, but there was no census. The number was probably around 8 million. So this figure is probably woefully understated. It's much more likely that 25 to 30% of the pre-genocide population of Rwanda no longer existed or had fled the country. In 2023, the Gaza Strip had 778,187 souls living in it. According to Palestinian authorities, Hamas, 23,000 Palestinian civilians have died as a consequence of Israel's retaliation and strike against Hamas. That represents 2.9% of the pre-strike population. 2.9%. By the way, this now is an action that has lasted far longer than the genocide in 1994, which was stopped within a matter of weeks. This has lasted longer. 22 to 30% of the population gone. 850,000 people murdered in Rwanda. When you say scale, that's ridiculous. That means that what's happened in Gaza, not to diminish deaths, is 1/10 of the devastation in human life as a percentage of population of what was seen in Rwanda. So Ronnie Lamola, this emotional reference to things that are ridiculous, it's much more akin to say that the Israeli destruction of the infrastructure, the residences, the hospitals, the clinics, the schools, the buildings, in Gaza is much more akin to the Allied criminal action against Dresden with firebombing, murdering 30,000 German civilians in a single night, burning them to death in a horrific fashion. Or with the Nazi and Soviet effort to grapple for Stalingrad, which led to not a single building remaining standing at the end of that conflict. That's where it's much more akin to. But both of those are actions took place in conflicts that are recognized. So his reference is just ridiculous. Then the thing that this is disappointing me about Israel is that they didn't go for the jugular with South Africa. They did not point out the hypocrisy of South Africa's government calling Israel's actions genocide when the actions of members of their own government reflect exactly what they claim Israel is doing. So, this is what Ronnie Lamola said. He says words of Israeli ministers, Israeli members of the parliament, and public figures using hate-filled speech, like pink pigs? Kill the boar, such as calling the people of Palestine human animals, show a clear statement of intent to wipe out the Palestinian population in Gaza. It says the UN's Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination stated such language is an incitement to genocide and underscored the importance of preventing genocide by all state actors. Once again, he's saying that officials in Israel using the phrase human animals means a clear intent to wipe out the Palestinian population. And the singing of songs to motivate black South Africans to kill white South Africans is different. How exactly? So a member of parliament singing "Kill the Boer, burn them out." That is not, under the UN Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination, the language that's inappropriate. Well, I agree with Ronnie Lamola. That language, human animals, is. But I agree that "Kill the Boer," such language used by members of South Africa's parliament, is lamentable, and that perhaps Pretoria should refer itself to the International Court of Justice, not Israel. The hypocrisy is rank. South Africa's argument, and let's be honest, I'll put this on the table. I am biased against a corrupt kleptocracy that misleads, distracts, and impoverishes millions of South Africans while destroying the engine of growth and undermining education and ensuring human misery. So yes, I definitely am opposed to the ANC. But had they presented a clear, cogent, legitimate case, would have listened. Virtually no points here in this argument by South Africa. It's an embarrassment to humanity. And I'm disappointed in Israel at not going for the jugular, calling out the rank hypocrisy of South Africa's government. A government that hosted Bashir when he was under indictment by the ICC and then threatened to leave the ICC because they were going to throw their toys out of the pram because they didn't like that a black African was charged. Well, you didn't cry when Slobodan Milosevic or Radovan Karadzic, white Europeans, were charged and brought before the Hague. You didn't have anything to whine about then. You didn't claim it was racist then. Only when a genocideer from Sudan gets refuge in your country. You didn't do anything to return Debe to face trial for his, not Debe, but his predecessor, not Debe, sorry, I misspoke, not Debe, but the Chadian dictator who was in South Africa and hosted and lived safely there. You didn't do anything about Emerson Mnangagwa when he fled to South Africa. You didn't arrest him. You didn't charge him. You didn't turn him over to competent authorities for the crimes that ZANU-PF committed against Zimbabweans in 1983 to 84 or in 2000 going forward. No, you gave him succor and refuge. Meanwhile, a legitimate member of the Zimbabwean parliament who was falsely imprisoned, who was raped, who was assaulted, whose life was put in jeopardy, legitimately elected, a white Zimbabwean, Roy Bennett, a member of the Movement for Democratic Change, elected to parliament, fled to South Africa and applied for political asylum. And you denied it. You denied it. You're hypocrites. You're frauds. You protect black genocideers while discriminating against your entire population. And you don't give asylum to legitimate asylum seekers. Zimbabwe borders South Africa. Roy Bennett fled to South Africa and sought political asylum. And you racist in the ANC denied that. This man was charged with a crime that had never been prosecuted before and carried a $50 fine, but sent to prison. Hard labor, sentenced there for a decade. Didn't serve a decade, but sent there. And then the government of Robert Gabriel Mugabe refused to recognize him as the deputy agricultural minister when he was appointed to that. And you facilitated these crimes against the people of Zimbabwe. ANC. You are responsible for chaos in the region. In the Central African Republic, your abysmal performance by pathetic military, fleeing in the face of loose goons carrying guns. Your interference in Cote d'Ivoire by Nelson Mandela prolonged the political dispute there. The behavior of your officers in the SANDF as observers in Ethiopia and Eritrea on the border, punching each other out. You are the country that needs to be brought before the ICJ for your actions against other states or your inaction against other states. Your hypocrisy is beyond the pale. Bigots, racist, kleptocrats, thieves, murderers. The ANC ranks are full of all of these people every single day. Statements of fact here, folks, not opinions. We can point them out. And by the way, speaking of criminals or alleged criminals, guess who teamed up with Jacob Zuma? Ace Magashule. You cannot make this stuff up. All right, let's get back to the chat and see who's in the chat and what they've got to say before I get on to the news, now that we're not buffering. All right. What I want to know, who's funding this stupid court case? ANC doesn't have the money. That's a good question, Alan. It's a good question. The Brits double-tapped the civilians in Dresden. Night raid followed. Yes, correct. It was despicable, Garrett. Absolutely. It's a war crime. Crime against humanity. And they justified it. Bomber Harris. They wanted to put a statue up to that guy. The Germans were pissed off about that, and rightly so. Skeptic, if Israel has no right to defend themselves, why should South Africa choose? Exactly. Sorry, folks. Still trying to deal with this. Yeah, Israel has a right to defend itself, but South Africa is making a fraudulent claim of genocide. It doesn't meet the threshold of genocide by the international conventions. Hello, Rich. Marilyn Brokershaw is here. Hey, Marilyn, where you been? I haven't seen you guys. You guys okay? I haven't seen you in a while. A bit. My favorite place to stay in Joburg with Marilyn and her family. All right, Sedgefield's here, and George is back. Hey, George, good to see you. Always good to see people we appreciate on the channel we haven't seen in a while, or maybe I've just missed them. Okay, apparently the sun's working, not a lot, but I'm getting something. I get 3.28 hours. So yesterday was a good day, but the day before I only had 5 hours, and the day before that was not even half a kilowatt. So hopefully we'll pick it up here. All right, Netflix will make a documentary of today's events, probably, and they'll make South Africa look out to be heroes. Absolutely. CyberEggs, you're welcome, CyberEggs. All right, let's get to the news, ladies and gentlemen, now that we've gotten through the buffering era here, which was not a courtesy of YouTube, not a courtesy of your service provider, but of my own service provider, failing to provide me with the bandwidth that I pay for. Jokey Atheist is back. Oh, my goodness. Compliments of the season all. The ANC are strategically positioning itself for support locally, internationally, creating all the wrong friends. Well, of course they create all the wrong friends. Their friends are Iran, North Korea, Russia, the Hamas, Venezuela, Cuba. Those are their friends. Chris Wyatt Reports here. And Rick Hearn is here. Hey, folks coming in left and right. All right, let's get to this, folks. Israel is not happy about this case. Israel argues that South Africa failed to prove urgency of its case and maintains Hamas as the enemy. Agreed. Gilad Noam, Deputy Attorney General for the for International Law at the Ministry of Justice, concluded the case on behalf of Israel, where he asserted that South Africa failed to demonstrate a genuine dispute between the two countries and did not establish a prima facie rights deserving protection. And this is what I said from the moment that the ANC made this farcical announcement that they were going to take Israel to the ICJ. There is no standing here. The ICJ does not exist to prosecute crimes against humanity or war crimes unless it's a country perpetrating it against another country. Israel and South Africa do not border each other. Israel has not launched a conflict against South Africa and vice versa. There's no standing for this case. That alone should throw it out. Probably what will come out of this, if these are not corrupt judges on this tribunal, is they will say that while the events in Israel are concerning and we urge Israel to use restraint and proportionality when responding to the terroristic actions of Hamas, which is bent on destroying Israel and killing all the Jews from the river to the sea, we lack the jurisdictional authority to address this case, as there is no dispute between South Africa and Israel that impinges on one or the other's sovereignty. That's what the decision should read. I've just read what the decision from the court should be. And right off the top of my mind, that's what it should be. We'll see what they say, but that's what it should be. Noam argued the events in question were part of a conflict initiated by Hamas. 100% correct. Asserting they do not fall under the scope of the Genocide Convention. Agreed. Also, South Africa did not prove the urgency of the case or show that stopping the Gaza war would result in irreparable harm to Israel. He emphasized that Israel consistently takes measures to address the humanitarian situation and deems the provisional measures sought by South Africa is unwarranted and prejudicial. Yep, exactly. He said it's unrealistic to say this Israel's not a moral country and hell-bent on destroying Palestinians. Correct. Yep. A whole bunch of people were at this event. South Africa represented Hamas, is what Israeli analysts are saying. Israel called South Africa a tool of Hamas on Thursday and decried what it called the hypocrisy underlying the case it presented to the International Court of Justice. The U.S. has said that it doesn't see legitimacy of the case, but is, other than that, pretty much steered clear of things. So, I mean, it's ridiculous what they're doing here, the South African government. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway. I don't know what to tell you other than we'll keep dealing with this. We'll keep dealing with this, keep talking about this topic here. We've got more stories on it here coming up. Just trying to find something here very quickly. That's not it. Boy, that's the wrong looking for there. Daniel Prinsloo is here, and we just, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Here it is. That's not what, okay, sorry. I've got some other notes here, and they're mixing up with the notes I need for this. So there should be one more file here. Whoops, come on. Where's that other file at? Should be this one. That's not it. What the heck happened here? Am I missing a file? That's not it. That's not it. Let me see if it all wound up here in the wrong place. Nope. It's not there. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. And that's not it either. I don't know what the heck happened here. Huh. I seem to be missing all my notes that I put together. I don't know what happened there, so my apologies. I put notes together talking, the comments that came out from this, and unfortunately I can't find it right now. Anyway. Yeah. In fact, Israel said, why didn't South Africa use its relationship with Hamas to get Hamas to stop its genocidal campaign against Israel? And there's a super chat from Daniel Prinsloo. Wow. Wow, thank you. 500 rand, excuse me. 500 rand. Wow. Thank you very much for that. Let me take a look at that very quickly over here and see what that translates into. Oh, that's 27 schmackaroos. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Don't know what the ANC hopes to gain from doing this. Distraction, John, an absolute distraction. And as I said, Israel has an opportunity to sway a number of reasonable, cogent, logical thinking people around the globe to their cause. Will they succeed? I can't say. And again, they should have used this as an opportunity to call out South Africa. But I suspect that Israel did not call out the hypocrisy of parliamentarians in South Africa calling for the murder of white South Africans, because then they would be accused of just, getting in a slugfest and trying to tarnish the reputation of South Africa. But the ANC tarnishes South Africa's reputation by its mere existence in the 21st century. Joking Atheist question, with all these goings on, is it overly presumptive to think that all this is things quit? Well, I don't know about a world war, but certainly conflicts are breaking out all over the place. The United States and the UK launched a devastating retaliatory attack against the Houthi on land. We're going to get to that a little bit later in the news. Joe Biden is under a lot of pressure here in the United States from Democrats and Republicans, as well as Palestinians and others, for his attack on the Houthi rebels in Yemen. It wasn't unjustified, but Congress is illegitimately claiming the president doesn't have the authority to do it. Unfortunately, he does have that authority because of the War Powers Act that Congress itself put in place back in the 1970s. He doesn't have to consult Congress for actions like this. Congress is claiming otherwise, and they're wrong, unfortunately. All right. So Daniel Prinsloo says, can anyone explain why these South African lawyers are so stupid? Well, Daniel, that's a good question, and thank you for that 500 Rand super chat. How can you explain how stupid they are? In fact, it's idiotic. We have a minister of justice who's making arguments that make no sense whatsoever. We have attorneys up there that are, it's just, what the South African government has done is basically take news clips and media misrepresentations and use them as a defense for their offensive argument against Israel. Yeah, absolutely. Walter Potter says they're right, but the ANC should be sued as well for murder of whites. Who are right? You got to help me out with that, Walter. I got the second part of that, but I don't know who they are and what they're talking about. Kurtz Verhoeven's here. Welcome. Yeah, Zuma math. Money for elections. Yeah, they're wanting money from Arab countries and others around the world. That's what's probably going on here. You're right about that. So Israel is saying that South Africa is representing Hamas. And the South African authorities meeting gleefully with Hamas representatives, and they don't denounce them. But then the South African lawyers claim that they did. Rani Lamola claimed that they denounced Hamas's attacks. When? When did the South African government publicly denounce the terroristic attacks of Hamas on October 7th? Could somebody please give me a link to that news report, video, tweet, anything, when the ANC condemned Hamas's attacks? I've never, ever seen one word from the ANC condemning it. I've seen lots from other players, but not a single word from the ANC. I'll admit, I may have missed it, but that could be intentional, as they did it on the QT. It certainly wasn't front page news. Walter says the ANC right, Israel's committing genocide in Gaza. Well, we'll have to agree to disagree on that, Walter, because I actually know something about this. And, Israel is not committing genocide. It doesn't reach the threshold of any of the Genocide Convention targets. And intent has to be part of genocide. And they cannot prove intent here. They have not proven intent here. The fact that the Israelis are bombing apartment buildings isn't genocide, it's warfare. The Russians and Ukrainians are bombing apartment buildings in Ukraine. Are they committing genocide? Civilians are dying in the tens and hundreds of thousands in Ukraine. Are Russia or Ukraine committing genocide on that basis? Hamas has made these people legitimate military targets. A mosque, a church, a synagogue, a school, a hospital, a clinic becomes a valid, legitimate military target under the law of land warfare, under the Geneva Conventions, under all international agreements, when a belligerent misuses it for military planning or operations. Hamas has put civilians in jeopardy. Hamas has made these civilians targets. Hamas bears the shame of 23,000 deaths in Gaza and 1,400 in Israel. Well, Walter, Israel isn't targeting civilians either, and you cannot prove one instance, one moment, one proof, one metric, any telemetry data, any communications, any documents, any orders to the effect that Israel is targeting civilians. It's simply not been proven. It's just inflammatory lies. It's inflammatory lies. Russia's not targeting civilians. Well, I didn't say Russia was. And neither is Israel. You're implying that they are, without any evidence to prove that. And we see time and again the lies perpetrated by the fraudulent media and by politicians, particularly here in America. Her and Rashida Tlaib, especially. Israel targeted the hospital. No. Palestinian terrorists fired rockets which prematurely lost their propellant and exploded over a hospital parking lot, not a hospital, and it wasn't Israel responsible for that. This is the lies that go on and on here. Look, I'm not defending Israel. I have accused Israel of some disproportionate attacks. I would have done this differently. I have accused Israel of some inappropriate language by members of the government. I've accused Israel of making demands on the Palestinian population which were unrealistic. Evacuate to the south. And then they bomb the border post. There's no logic to that. Where are you supposed to go if you tell them to go south and then you block their exit? Of course, Egypt blocked their exit, to be honest. So the truth is what matters here. And the truth is lost by emotional actors who simply repeat or retweet nonsense without any foundation whatsoever. I mean, right here, Ronnie Lamola, the scale of these actions is reminiscent of the genocide in Rwanda. No, it's not. It's not even remotely like that. Now, the Israelis factually say that the slaughter of over 1,000 people in Israel, not all of whom were Jews, by the way, some were Muslim, some were Christian, the slaughter of over 1,000 people by Hamas on the 7th of October is the largest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. That's factually correct, but it's also intentionally inflammatory and emotional. Israel seeks to curry support and sympathy by stating the facts. Walter says the number of civilians killed in Gaza. I agree 100%. Walter, brother, we are in agreement. We are simpatico here. The number of civilians dying, one is too many. That's my position. 23,000 is outrageous. But whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? Hamas. So what should Israel do? What's lost in this conversation is that Hamas exists for one reason: the extermination of the Jewish people. It's stated in their documents. This isn't a secret. They're recognized by over 40 countries as a terrorist organization around the world, including the United States, the European Union. And what's ignored in this conversation is if Israel doesn't exterminate, and that's the word I'm using, exterminate Hamas's military ability, they will simply continue to do what they've done for 15 years, indiscriminately fire rockets into Israel at civilian schools, hospitals, clinics, shopping centers, malls, kibbutz, murdering innocent civilians, Arab, Christian, and Jew alike. And the world has not called them to account for that. The nonsense coming from uninformed, hate-wanking keyboard warriors out Israel out of Gaza, Israel out of Gaza. That was the call on October 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, for the 3 weeks before Israel actually went across the border. Israel wasn't in Gaza. They haven't been in Gaza since 2005, when they said, we've had enough of this crap. You run your own country. We're not here to administer this anymore. You're going to have it. They walked out. And then the Palestinians armed and went across the border and kidnapped Israelis, raped, murdered, slaughtered. Then they put up border fences and a defensive system to keep them from coming in. So then, supplied by Iran and other nefarious actors around the planet, they start firing rockets into Israel. For over 15 years, where's the condemnation of this criminal act? This crime against humanity has gone on for years, ignored. Hamas wanted thousands of dead Palestinians, and they got it. And Walter, I agree with you 100%. It is outrageous. It is outrageous. But the blame needs to be placed where the blame needs to be placed, on the Palestinian people in Gaza for voting for Hamas and Hamas for its crimes against humanity. Israel must be urged or forced to show restraint where appropriate and proportionality always. Always. Spiker Hunt's here. Maybe we should call out the names of the shills that take money to write these things for their lead overlords. Well, Verksoig, man, I agree. Consulting firms, journalists, ghostwriters, call out their names. Yeah. 27,000 murders just last year in South Africa. Yep, Rick. 82 murders per day. It's known that Hamas is deliberately hiding behind civilians. True. Jokey Atheist says to John, what's a Zionist? Well, that is it's a very inflammatory term that's meant to tarnish someone's reputation. It has little bearing today. Zionism was a movement in the 19th century for a return of Jews to their homeland in Israel. Now, let's be very clear. Throughout history, there have always been Jews in Israel. Many of them were forced to flee, but there have always been Jews there. The Romans were persecuting them horrifically. If you ever watch Life of Brian. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so they've always been there, but in far smaller numbers than today, where they're the majority. The Zionist movement was an effort to return to their homeland. And it started in the 19th century and it continued. But their goal was the creation of an Israeli state, a Jewish state. That was achieved in 1948. There's no Zionism. Calling people Zionists today is just a racial slur. And yes, a Zionism is not racist, but it's meant as a racial slur against Jews who are perceived to be different. Yeah. So yeah, no, it has no bearing whatsoever. They're trying to apply to people today, say that Israel has a right to exist, calling them Zionists. Israel does have a right to exist. Of course it has a right to exist. That's not Zionism, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to equate it to that. And correct, Zionism does not equate to Judaism. They're two separate things. Palestinian Authority is the one that rejected two-state solution, not Israel. Yes, Brett, we've talked about this. Ehud Barak lost his premiership of Israel in large measure because he offered peace to the Palestinians. And Israelis, as a population, didn't want it then. At least the voters didn't. He offered a two-state solution. He even offered to negotiate the future status of Jerusalem, which is something Israel has never considered. But Ehud Barak offered that. And everyone's forgotten about Ehud Barak, the man who tried to bring peace to the Middle East. And oh, by the way, we had peace in the Middle East. Remember that? Donald Trump, the Abraham Accords. The son-in-law that everybody loves to hate, who didn't take a penny from the government, Jared Kushner, negotiating these deals. And they're still holding up. Morocco and Israel retain close relations, and other states, for the most part, that Israel has put close relations to, despite the conflict that Hamas has begun, they still remain in close coordination. Remember the 72 Olympics when the Israeli Olympic team was targeted by Black September? Oh, yes, I remember. 72 Olympics, yep. I've been to those apartments. Radine says there's some Jews who are opposed to Israel. Yeah, and there are lots of white South Africans, just self-loathing racists who hate white South Africans. And lots of white liberal Americans who are racist and hate white Americans. And lots of blacks who hate blacks. So, I mean, you're right, but how is that germane to the conversation, Radine? I can find useful idiots everywhere. Everywhere. It's like Republicans. Mitch McConnell, a Republican. Paul Ryan, a Republican. They're not conservative. They're deep state actors. So if you're a Jew that lives in Israel today and wishes to remain safe in the region, you get called a Zionist. That's correct, joking atheist. But it's not weird. It just shows the wholesale ignorance or just the ability of people to lie to people's faces. I don't think peace in the Middle East has ever happened. Problem. Why was Omar Bradley so happy when General Patton had that accident? I didn't know that Omar Bradley was happy. I've never heard that story. Where do you get your information from on that, Spike Rowan? It seems most politicians, most of the world's population cannot see 25, 50, 100 years plans, as such plans are often pursued in stages. Yep. Menaj Akwa says, did Yitzhak Rabin bring peace to Israel? Why was he taken out? I'm not going to get into that Menaj Akwa right now. That's a good question, though. Yitzhak Rabin was, yeah, good question. Alan Dershowitz wrote some excellent books on Israel, making a case for Israel. Could they punish South Africa for making false statements? And no, they can't punish them. And frankly, the International Court of Justice can't do anything. Ladies and gentlemen, I've talked to you about Botswana, Namibia, Sududu Island. ICJ awarded Sududu to Botswana. Both sides respect the decision. The Bokassa Peninsula in Cameroon, Anglophone speaking in a Francophone country, part of Nigeria, awarded to Cameroon. Both sides respect the decision. The International Court of Justice also told China that its claims to the Paracels and the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea for the 9-dash line is illegitimate. And China still occupies these fake islands built upon coral reefs, destroying the environment. They still claim them. They still occupy them with their warships and their planes, despite the ICJ telling them not to do it. So the ICJ will accomplish nothing here. All that's happening is the ANC is distracting from all that's happening in South Africa right now in the early stages of an election year. No one's talking about, for the most part, Blade Nzimande. No one's talking about the Vreda dairy scandal, which is yet to be resolved, the asbestos tender, Zandile Gumeda's corruption in Durban, the accused corruption, or the dozens of South African ANC members who've been charged with, arrested, or being hunted down for the murder of their colleagues to get their offices. No one's talking about that. What we're talking about is Israel, which has nothing to do with South Africa whatsoever in this circumstance. Yep. Looks very happy. The photo is almost like his cousin. I have no idea what you're talking about. All right, so let's get back to the news. The October 7th attack, Times Live, Hamas attack on Israel, was the largest mass murder of Jews in a single day since the Holocaust. Which is true, but again, it's pulling at an emotional string. Israel's legal team was responding to an application by South Africa accusing it of genocide in its war against Hamas. It's not Israel's war against Hamas, it's Hamas's war. That is factually incorrect what they state here. On Thursday, South Africa presented its weak case at the Peace Palace in The Hague. Tal Becker, legal advisor to Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, recounted how the attack that started a music festival resulted in the killing of 1,200 people and others being taken hostage. They proudly filmed and broadcast their barbarism. Yep. So, oh boy, yeah. The ICJ heard Israel's defense today. Yep, day 2 of the ICJ hearing. Israel argues South Africa failed to provide urgency of its case and maintains Hamas as the enemy. Agreed. Yep. Interesting. So that was the big news for today, and it's still going. So Ronnie Lamola, I mentioned him, and I'll do another video on that. He's sitting there smiling like an idiot. That's him in front of the court. We're talking about a serious situation, and that's his demeanor. Chuckling and laughing. Yep. And he goes through all this nonsense talking about how great and wonderful the ANC is and how the South Africa is devoted to peace, yet they've invaded Mozambique. They've invaded Central African Republic. They've invaded Burundi. And you can argue, no, those are peacekeeping missions. Really? 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 A VIP protection unit? You're protecting the political class of Burundi? That's a peacekeeping mission? No, it's not. It's not. Well, ladies and gentlemen, more South African news and not talking about Israel. Ex-ANC chiefs Zuma and Ace Magashule team up ahead of the elections. This one being honestly reported by Al Jazeera. South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma has joined forces with another graft-tainted former ruling party official, announcing a political alliance ahead of the elections. The 81-year-old Zuma and 64-year-old Ace Magashule. They said they will soon unveil plans for a joint political future. The Magashule-Zuma United Front will mark a departure from traditional politics towards a more inclusive, people-centric approach. Magashule's party, the African Congress for Transformation, said in a statement. Oh, sorry, I can't help it. Ace Magashule, I don't know. Ace, what's going on at the Vreda Dairy Farm? Hey, what about that asbestos tender? Yeah, come on, Ace, tell us about that. Hey, Jay-Z, can you tell us more about your fire pole? Or better yet, the deal that no one's talking about as we have an election here. And Jacob Zuma, a man with a terminal illness, near death, can't serve his prison sentence. Released from prison. He's got Sheikh Shabaitis on him. He and his disgraced financial advisor, who was also terminally ill a decade ago, out on the golf course still. No one's talking about this. These thoroughly corrupt political figures. Instead, we're talking about Israel. Teresa says, Carr was UN's first peacekeeping proactive using SANDF in 2013. Apparently, was the Lord's Resistance Army children. The Lord's Resistance Army was not located there. It was located in West Africa. So I'm not sure what you're talking about, Teresa. I think I did read I think your point you're making, it's the first time the UN used South Africa for peacekeeping. But South Africa did peacekeeping, or they called it peacekeeping, in the Congo, in Abidjan without troops, in Ethiopia, Eritrea with observers, in CAR with troops, in Mozambique with troops, in Comoros with troops, more than once. How come the guns of Maracana tune others? Yeah, exactly. Yep. Middle East has been peaceful under the Ottoman Empire from 16. That's not entirely accurate, Radine. That's not entirely accurate. It wasn't peaceful, but it's glossed over by historians who don't know the history of the world. It wasn't exactly peaceful. There were lots of problems in that 3-century period. Also, that was a period of immense decline for the Ottoman Empire, and that's one reason why there was some unrest throughout. There was unrest in what became Syria and Iraq, and also in some of North Africa throughout that 200 or 300-year period. Yep. All right, Trump is the only way to perhaps escape international tragedy. I don't know if he's the only way, but it's pretty scary what we got going on. Pretty scary what's going on around the world. Ronnie is a very wingat. Yeah. Type the message didn't appear as YouTube censored me. Could be Alan. I see your message now. I don't know. You must have put a word in there that YouTube didn't like. They do that, and it's not my moderators. YouTube does that frequently. Yep. So the move could further, this Ace Magashule and Jacob said, the move could further dilute support for the ANC, which is struggling to get to 50%. Blade Nsamande, the communist, former Secretary General of South African Communist Party and Education Minister, Higher Education Minister, distanced himself from reports that he's lobbying for university tuition and residence fee hikes. Higher Education Minister Blade Nsamande has denied reports that he's lobbying for increases to university fees. The department's statement comes after a News 24 report that said that Nzamani proposed a tuition and student resident fee hikes of 4.5% and 6.5% respectively. Interesting. The letter said students from the missing middle, whose annual income is between 350,000 and 600,000 rand, will be hardest hit by the proposed hikes. Well, Blade Nzamani says he's you in the Shaggy defense. Picture this: we were both butt naked there on the bathroom floor. Wasn't me. Wasn't me. Blade Nzamani says it wasn't me. The graphic image and footage were not openly shown in court. They were, however, provided for court as part of the bundle. Yeah, John, and the ANC criticized them, or not criticized, but claimed we're not going to show graphic images. Of course you're not, because you don't want Hamas, your friends, to be exposed. 7 people arrested for the kidnapping of a Johannesburg businessman, ladies and gentlemen. And I guess now that I've stopped talking about Israel and the ICJ, my audience is shrinking. I noticed we were over 100 people there a few moments ago. Wow. Our peak was 107, and now we're back to 95. People just want to hear me talk about Israel. I can do that for hours, but we're covering the news in this program. I guess I'll have to go back and do the ICJ analysis report. That's what I'll do. We'll just do that, and I'll parse through all the comments, and I'll analyze them. That's what I'll do later on. But anyway, 7 people have been arrested in connection with the kidnapping of a 48-year-old businessman in Fordsburg. Less than 24 hours after the kidnapping, police team traced the businessman and alleged kidnappers to a lodge in Ferndale. 6 vehicles used by the suspects have been seized and impounded. Money that was allegedly withdrawn from his bank account has also been recovered. Wow. Most recent quarterly crime statistics show that between July and September, there were 4,300 kidnappings across the country. Half of those, 2,194, took place in Gauteng. Next was KZN with 860. My goodness. Unbelievable. It's like Colombia. South Africa has become Colombia. The drug lords kidnapping people for money. Well, the world's largest virtual mobile operator, Lycra. If you're from the UK, you'll know who I'm talking about. Every little tuck shop, every little store that sells things, every grocery store sells these Lycra mobile phone, virtual phone cards. Well, they're wrapping up their business in South Africa, and you're screwed. It's too late. Yep, Lycra Mobile shut down its mobile virtual network operator services on the 9th of January. They operate in 23 countries, and they consider themselves the largest mobile virtual operator in the world. It's 16 million customers back in 2022. It was launched in South Africa in 2017 using Cell C's network. However, a notice on its website said it's no longer possible to continue providing service in South Africa. Subscribers who wanted to keep their numbers had until January 9th to port it to another provider. Too late. Your mobile number ceased to work after that date. And anybody who had credit could request to be refunded, but you had to do it by January 9th. However, if you want to change your number from Lycra to another provider like Cell C or MTN, you can't get a refund on your credit. Wow. There's an argument against loading up your phone with lots of credit because you'll just get robbed if they go out of business. But Lycra is no longer in business in South Africa. I don't know why. The story doesn't tell us why from my broadband. No indication if they couldn't get a contract or if they lost their services with Cell C. Nothing. Well, those in Sandton who were going to have their water turned off get a break a little bit longer, courtesy of heavy rains. Don't mean to laugh at your misery, but it's silly. Sandton residents won't go without water as was planned this weekend after the Rand Water postponed emergency valve replacement because of recent heavy rains. Work to replace the valve was set to begin Thursday and continue into today with bulk water supply cut. However, they didn't get around to it because of the heavy rains. So, not sure when it's going to happen now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and it's here. I'm glad you're here. We have over 90 people, and a lot of them from South Africa. I had 100 a moment ago. A lot of people here. Thanks for being here. Obviously, you're here because you're not suffering from load shedding, or you've got a backup power supply, a battery, or something like that. But load shedding is back, and it is back in a major way. Stage 4 load shedding hits after more breakdowns and delays, and Eskom releases a new schedule. Today, from 5 o'clock in the morning to 4 p.m., which we've now passed, stage 1, but from 4 p.m. until midnight, which we're in right now, it's stage 3. Tomorrow, stage 3, from midnight to 4 p.m., and from 4 p.m. to midnight, stage 4. Sunday, stage 4, midnight to 5 a.m., stage 3, 5 to 4, and the stage 4 from 4 to 10. Wow. Eskom said unplanned outage is currently at 15.5 megawatts of generating capacity. 15.5 gigawatts. 15,561 megawatts generating capacity, while the capacity out of service for planned maintenance is 7.8. That means that 25.1 gigawatts of the 43 gigawatts that South Africa has is currently in service. Can you believe that? Ladies and gentlemen, this is how inept this corrupt kleptocracy the ANC is. So 25 divided by 43, 58% of South Africa's electrical generation capacity is currently offline. 58%. Not 58% available, 58% offline. Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's peak demand. Oh, correction. Woo. Everybody calm down. I misspoke. That's peak demand. But that's 58. Demand is only going to be 58% of what the grid's capable of because it's not there. Wow. Some of the folks in Ladysmith subjected to that horrific flooding recently say they're going hungry after all their food was washed away. With no fatalities, while no fatalities reported, what's this? No, there were people killed. Huh? Some of the town's poor residents said they lost most of their belongings, were now facing hunger after their food was washed away by the water that gushed into their homes. Resident Tembe Modise claimed they received little assistance from the government. We were moved to a community hall on Monday evening and received no food until Tuesday afternoon. On Wednesday, a municipal official told us to return to our homes because the rain had stopped. She said, our beds are still wet, so tonight we're planning to sleep on the plastic-covered mattresses that we were given at the hall. I don't know yet about what we're going to eat because all the food that we had stockpiled in December was swept away by the rain. That's unfortunate. Probably Gift of the Givers will reach in and help out these people, would be my expectation. They really do these good deeds. So, creditors have decided that the Tongaat Hewlett Sugar Company will be turned over to Robert Gumede, his consortium. Prominent businessman Robert Gumede's consortium has won the race to take over cash-strapped sugar company Tongaat Hewlett, which had an accounting scandal a couple years ago. Vision Investments is a consortium comprising Gumede's Guma Agri and Food Security Group, Romogo Investments, headed by Zimbabwean businessman Rute Moyo, and the Terrace Fund, led by Samancor, an agriculture investor Amre Younes, who's been investing in Southern Africa for many years. There you go. So, Tongaat Hewlett looks like they're going to come back from the brink. We've talked about this story before, folks, but the Cape Winelands Airport, apparently they want to go forward with it. Set for an estimated 7 billion rand expansion, and it will be in place by 2027. They claim it'll create thousands of jobs, and those are pre- and post-construction. Let's wait and see. The airfield has been around since 1943, and it's historically served civilian and non-commercial flights, but its new owners plan to change this. It will act as an entry point to the Cape Winelands, providing various domestic and international flight choices. All right. They expect to have 25% of the passenger market into Cape Town, with 2 million global visitors and 3 million domestic travelers annually. That is a huge ambition for this airport. There you go. The Cape Winelands Airport, located northeast of Durbanville, west of Paarl, and northwest of Stellenbosch. Well, we'll see what happens. 7 billion rand. Where's that money coming from? Who's got that cash? Burundi has closed its border with Rwanda in the latest spat between the two countries. President Ndayishimiye accuses Rwanda of backing the DRC-based group Red Tabara against his government. In late December, Burundi's President Ndayishimiye accused Rwanda of hosting and training the Red Tabara rebel group, which claimed responsibility for an attack near Burundi's western border with the DRC. Rwanda has rejected his allegations. So you cannot travel between Rwanda and Burundi today. Cape Verde claims to become another African country to eradicate malaria. Cape Verde has become the third African nation to be declared malaria-free, even as the disease continues to kill hundreds of thousands of people on the continent. The Atlantic archipelago of 500,000 inhabitants follows Mauritius in 1973 and Algeria in 2019. Worldwide, some 43 countries have been certified as malaria-free by the World Health Organization, which requires showing that the domestic chain of transmission has been broken for at least 3 consecutive years. Congratulations to Cape Verde. That's impressive. The World Health Organization estimates that malaria killed 608,000 people worldwide and infected 250 million in 2022. It's especially present in Africa, which accounts for 95% of the deaths and 94% of contamination or infection. Contamination, it's infection. Well, African Catholic bishops say no to same-sex unions that the corrupt Argentinian Pope has foisted upon Catholics globally. They reject the Vatican's same-sex blessings. Roman Catholic bishops of Africa and Madagascar on Thursday issued a statement refusing to follow Pope Francis' declaration permitting priests to offer blessings to same-sex couples, signed by Congolese Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo on behalf of the Symposium of Episcopal Conferences of Africa and Madagascar, or CCAM, which is actually a type of television transmission, CCAM. The statement said such unions were contrary to the will of God. The move comes after the Argentinian clown Francis on December 18th approved a declaration allowing priests to offer blessings to same-sex couples, which was welcomed by the LGBTQ Catholics. In the declaration, the Vatican reaffirmed the traditional church teaching that marriage is only between a man and a woman. African Catholic bishops and the Vatican's declaration contradicted the culture, said that it contradicted the cultural ethos of African communities. And indeed it does. So, not going to happen. Could lead to a schism in the Catholic Church. Now, this is an interesting story being published by News 24, which is just nonsensical. And let me explain to you why it's nonsensical. The story is by Ntandu Tukwana, and I question the validity of the story, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. So stick with this for just a second. So, the United States agrees preliminary deal with Africa on extending AGOA by 10 years, says Ibrahim Patel. The United States has reached preliminary agreement with African nations to extend their preferential trade access by another decade pending approval by Congress, South Africa's trade minister said. We reached broad agreement on the need to extend it for 10 years. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act is U.S. domestic law. We don't need an agreement with any African country, and we don't have an agreement with any African country to grant them access. We have no treaty agreement with South Africa giving them access to AGOA. We just allow it by public law. Although South Africa is not eligible for AGOA, they're undermining the rule of law. Their disregard and abrogation of property rights with expropriation without compensation efforts is a clear violation of the tenets of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. But this is a nonsensical story. Who cares what African governments want? It's our law giving you free access to our market if you just meet certain thresholds. Simple as that. This is a story that makes no sense whatsoever. And this is from November. This is a story today reported, but it's an event that took place in November. U.S. government held its AGOA conference in which it talked about the future of AGOA and the potentialities for AGOA and the punishments for AGOA and the benefits for AGOA with African partners. But there's no agreement. We didn't negotiate anything with Africans. This is ludicrous. This is unbelievable. This is not news. This is just crap filling space on a server somewhere. The United States and British military launch a retaliatory strike against the Houthi rebels onshore. Massive retaliatory strike against Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. The U.S. and British militaries bombed more than a dozen sites using the Iranian-backed Houthis used by the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen. In a massive retaliatory strike using warship and submarine-launched Tomahawk and fighter jets. Wow. U.S. Air Force's Mideast Commands, that's CENTCOM, said it struck over 60 targets at 16 sites in Yemen, including command and control nodes, munitions depots, launching systems, and production facilities, as well as air defense radar systems. President Jackass Joe Biden said the strikes were meant to demonstrate the U.S. and its allies will not tolerate the militant group's ceaseless attacks on the Red Sea. These strikes are in direct response to the unprecedented Houthi attacks against international maritime vessels in the Red Sea. Well, the U.S. and its partners have been using defensive measures to shoot down these things and warn the Houthis to stop doing it or they would strike back. Well, the Houthis, for their part, say, hey, bring it on. They will respond after the U.S.-led strikes in Yemen. They condemn the air and naval attacks and expansion of the conflict in the Middle East. And President Biden said he will not hesitate to act further if the Houthis continue targeting Red Sea shipping. Here are supporters of the Houthi on Thursday in Sana'a, Yemen. These are people who support murder. Good Lord. Wow. Crazy stuff going on there in the Middle East, folks. Crazy, crazy stuff. And the Joe Biden administration is leading us right down the road. Here in the United States, Donald Trump's closing arguments, the judge relented and allowed Donald Trump to respond in his defense. Sort of. He interrupted him and cut him off all the time and eventually shut him off altogether. So now he's got a defense that he didn't bar Trump from speaking in his own self-defense in this kangaroo trial in New York. Trump assails prosecutor and judge at business fraud trial. Former President Donald Trump assailed the prosecutor and judge during closing arguments Thursday at his civil business fraud trial in New York, contending the state attorney general and jurists were attempting to derail his presidential campaign. State Judge Arthur Engoron had barred Trump from giving his own closing argument in the case against him, but he relented and allowed Trump to speak after his lawyer finished a formal rebuttal of the state's case, asking that Trump and the company be fined $370 million and barred from doing business in New York. And Trump said, they want to make sure I never win again. The attorney general hates Trump, and if I can't talk about it, it's a disservice. So Erdogan interrupted him. He told Trump, Trump responded and said, you have your own agenda. You can't listen for more than 1 minute. This is a fraud on me. What's happened here, sir, is a fraud on me. And he later accused him of not listening. He told Erdogan, he said, I know this is boring to you. And Erdogan told his lawyer, control your client. This asshat of a jurist is being exposed for the fraud that he is. Oh, my goodness. And after another minute, Erdogan cut off Trump and recessed arguments. Yep, totally interfering with his defense. This will not stand. Annie, 30100 just subscribed. Well, thank you, Annie. Well, that's an unusual subscription out of the blue there. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, deflation is on the minds of the communists in China. They're worried about not inflation, but deflation. Domestic demand is weak. Fears are growing that China will try to export its way out of trouble, raising trade tensions. China is sinking deeper into its worst deflation in years, spelling trouble for the whole world as demand falters in its second largest economy. With many Chinese worried about the economic outlook and unwilling to spend, consumer prices fell for a third straight month in December. Official data showed Friday prices charged by manufacturers dropped for the 15th month in a row. Wow. Things are not looking good in China. And I warned you all about this years ago, and I've been telling the intelligence community for 15 years that China's rise will reach a plateau and they will decline, at least briefly, and level off. Well, that's kind of what's happening now. In Myanmar, over in Asia, the military and rebel groups agreed to an immediate ceasefire. Myanmar's military has reached a ceasefire with an alliance of ethnic minority guerrilla groups that has been battling in the country's northeast. The agreement was brokered at talks mediated by China. China hopes the relevant parties in Myanmar can conscientiously implement the agreement, exercise maximum restraint towards each other, and solve the issues through dialogue and consultations. Well, unlikely to happen because the illegitimate military junta that's ruling Myanmar is committing crimes against humanity and also war crimes. So it's unlikely that the guerrillas will give up their fight to get freedom to Myanmar. And here's an example of the political abuse in Myanmar. A filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, has been sentenced to life in prison. An award-winning journalist and documentary filmmaker was sentenced to life in prison in Myanmar on Wednesday. Shin Dway was sentenced to life in prison for allegedly violating Myanmar's anti-terrorism law, according to her husband. She was arrested in October while picking up a video drone she had ordered online to use for filming a documentary. Police interrogated the 50-year-old for 2 weeks before charging her and moving her to the infamous insane prison. Shindway was eventually tried by a secret military tribunal, denied legal representation. When she returned, he couldn't get access to her. He heard that she had injured her head. She had stitches on her head and welts on her arms, clear signs that she had been beaten and interrogated. She's known for her coverage of environmental issues in Myanmar, as well as the toll conflict takes on civilians, the country's civilians. Yep. So, by sentencing a documentary film director to life in prison under the pretext of terrorism, this military junta has shown just how illegitimate it is. And where is the Biden regime in the reference to this? Well, another thing that China heralded and developing nations fell for was the Belt and Road Initiative. And a lot of analysts and a lot of politicians here in America freaked out. Oh, the Belt and Road Initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative. And what I told people is the Belt and Road Initiative is a brilliant scam by the Chinese communists to expand access for them to import raw materials and to export their goods around the world at the expense of the countries where the infrastructure lies. And how is that possible? Because the Belt and Road Initiative isn't being built with grants. It's largely being built with loans from Chinese government and Chinese banks to Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Djibouti, whatever country it is. And the project is being done by Chinese firms who get paid. And the money is borrowed by countries around the world who are now in debt to China, and the Chinese get exclusive 50-year contracts and things like that for the ports and airfields that they build. It's a win-win-win for China, except it's beginning to fail. The first Western developed country to foolishly join the Belt and Road Initiative was Italy, which is now withdrawn, and it is beginning to stagnate after much investment. And the Epoch Times runs a story about it. Finally, someone talking about it. The Chinese Communist Party's trillion-dollar geopolitical weapon is failing. The Belt and Road Initiative loses appeal over hidden military ambitions, corruption, and a lack of economic results. China's $1 trillion global investment program just turned 10, and it's losing its luster. The Belt and Road Initiative, touted as a platform for China to build trade and investment links to developing countries, has evolved much in the past decade. But weariness from countries in recent years has grown, and the program has drawn criticism over issues ranging from saddling partners with unsustainable debt to fueling corruption and labor practices. Italy formally pulled out of the initiative in December, striking a blow to Chinese regime's aims to expand the initiative beyond low and middle-income countries. Italy is the only G7 country to ever join the Belt and Road Initiative. Philippines also dropped out a month prior and said it would seek alternative funding for the $5 billion that China had pledged for rail lines but failed to deliver. Yep. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party has been more explicit about why they're doing it. They're accelerating the reform of the global governance system. One belt, one road. In other words, they're trying to turn us all into vassals of the communists. So they've been honest about it, and that's why people are losing interest. Well, the United Kingdom continues the proxy war in Ukraine, now sending more aid to Volodymyr Zelensky's corrupt government. Yep, European countries increase support for Kiev as U.S. funding hangs in the balance. United Kingdom government pledged nearly $3 billion in fresh military support for the Ukraine on Friday. The latest example of Europe bolstering aid for the war-torn country as additional U.S. funding hangs in the balance. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced a $2.5 billion package, which is $200 million more than the UK pledged last year. Well, it seems the Western Europeans want to continue to let Ukrainians die at their behest. A Toronto man was arrested for displaying a terrorist flag, yet not revealed to the public what that terrorist flag was, for the public incitement of hatred. Talk about an Orwellian state. A Toronto man has been arrested and charged with public incitement of hatred after displaying what police describe as a terrorist flag during a demonstration in the city's downtown. Maged Sameh Halil Al-Khalaf, 41, was arrested and charged after he allegedly marched in the Queen Street West and Bay Street area waving the flag of an organization listed as a terrorist group by Public Safety Canada, the Toronto Police Service stated. Mr. Al-Khalaf is scheduled to appear in Ontario court. Hate and intimidation can have no space in our country, and we have been unwavering in our commitment to restore the sense of public safety and not tolerate behavior that crosses a line to criminality. Ladies and gentlemen, when you fear a flag, when you have to criminalize a symbol, it shows the weakness of character and moral fortitude of your nation. Canada's government is run by cowards who are afraid of free speech. Now, I suspect the gentleman either had an ISIS flag or a Hamas flag, and they're considering that a terrorist act because he carried a flag. Much like Australia banning the Nazi salute and the Nazi flag. You're cowards. You're absolute cowards. Free speech is universal. It is a God-given right. It is a natural right. And the Canadian cowards should not censor people in this fashion. Well, the economy is going wonderful here in America, folks. I'm sure you've heard about this. The Biden administration tells us every day, inflation is down. It's under control. Joe Biden has created 30 million jobs. Everything's great and wonderful. The price of gasoline has come down. Well, yeah, from $5 a gallon to $3.50 a gallon. I guess that's come down. But it was $1.89 a gallon before Jackass Joe took over. Yeah. And inflation isn't going away. It went up another 3.4% this past month over the previous year. That's a 1-month increase. We are being eaten alive by the policies of Biden and his corrupt regime. Oh, but the economy is wonderful. Well, if the economy is so wonderful, why is Citigroup firing 20,000 people? The bank, which has 200,000 employees, will fire 10% of its workforce, 20,000 in the coming months, in this great economy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in Montgomery, in Montgomery County, Maryland, a beltway county of the District of Criminality, D.C., Montgomery County has an event like Comic-Con, and it's a racist event. Let me explain what I'm talking about. White vendors pay more. Maryland's Montgomery County uses race-based pricing for comic book convention. An event for fans of comic books and graphic novels in Montgomery County, Maryland is charging vendors different prices based on race and gender, with the highest prices reserved for businesses run by white men. MocoCon is the county's take on the popular Comic-Con gatherings, but the 20 January event in Germantown Library features gender and race-based pricing for vendors that critics say is discriminatory and potentially illegal. Montgomery County officials insisted the disparate pricing for vendors promotes inclusiveness in a venue often dominated by white people. An application for vendors posted on their website lists various rates. A table for a woman or minority-owned business is $225 or $250 if you want an electrical plug. The rate for a business that doesn't identify as women or minority is $275 or $325 with electricity. The $275 price was listed for regular people who want to be vendors. While MocoCon is held in the Germantown Library, a public site, the vendors will be located at the nearby Black Rock Center for the Arts. Regular with electricity access is $325, the application said. The application was later updated to remove regular but retain the gender and race-based rates. This is crazy, said Reardon Sullivan, former chairman of the Republican Party there. He ran on successor county executive. Being black and growing in Montgomery County, it's really, truly insulting to say that a seller who's black or BIOP is disadvantaged. All we ever want is a level playing field. Of course, he is black. This is unbelievable. This racism is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in a blockbuster news release, which potentially may get people censored on platforms like this, simply reporting the news, but let's risk it. The Epoch Times releases a news story in an exclusive that the Veterans Administration had identified a concern about the jab, which was ignored by the Centers for Disease Control. Veterans Affairs found safety signal for Pfizer jab, never disclosed it. Government officials purportedly found a signal for heart inflammation. Yep. Department of Veterans Affairs detected a signal for myocarditis and pericarditis in an email on May 13th of 2021. And the government, according to the Epoch Times, covered it up. According to the Epoch Times, they covered it up. Now, I can't vouch for this story, the veracity of it, but that's the bottom line here, folks. There's the link if anybody wants to go open that story up on their own. I'm not going to read the rest of the story because I know that on this platform you risk censorship if you actually accurately report the news. So we're going to stop there on that story. Well, Harvard is in more trouble as Jewish students sue the university for its racism. Harvard is accused of severe and pervasive anti-Semitism in a lawsuit filed by Jewish students. 6 Jewish students have filed a federal lawsuit accusing Harvard of violating their civil rights by allowing anti-Jewish hatred to flourish on campus. The latest blow to the Ivy League college's prestige amid a public reckoning over spiraling anti-Semitism. Students Against Anti-Semitism sued Harvard on behalf of 4 unnamed Harvard Law School students and 1 PhD student. Harvard, America's leading university, has become a bastion of rampant anti-Jewish hatred and harassment, says the lawsuit. Wow. Federal lawsuit, folks. Harvard not looking good. The Biden administration gave $700,000 to prevent transgender boys from becoming pregnant. The Biden administration gave $700,000 of our tax dollars to an organization to prevent transgender boys from becoming pregnant. Now, I repeated that because I couldn't believe this to be true. This makes no sense. The Biden administration has dished out nearly $700,000 to support the creation of a national pregnancy prevention program for transgender boys. The Health and Human Services Department handed over the funds in September of last year to the Center for Innovative Public Health Research, a nonprofit that develops health technologies, according to its website. The program will utilize a text messaging program that was designed for cisgender, sexual minority girls between the ages of 14 and 18 to address social and structural influences of sexual behavior in transgender boys. Transgender boys, who are biological females, may be less likely to use condoms when having sex with people who have penises and are at least as likely as cisgender girls to be pregnant. What? I can't help laugh. My government gave this NGO our tax dollars to send text messages to 14 to 18-year-old biological females telling them, if you're having sex with men, make sure they're wearing a condom. Are you serious? Are you serious? What the frick is going on here? This is bat crap crazy. We are giving a non-governmental organization $700,000 to tell 14 to 18-year-old children who are biologically female with uteruses and eggs to ensure that their partners who have penises wear a condom so that they don't become pregnant. Because somehow their biology to become pregnant is different than other little girls who are 14. What the? This is insane. This is government out of control. This is government run amok. First off, not even talk about the morality of sending text messages to underage children. Let's not talk about that. Let's not even talk about the whole trans nonsense. Let's just address the fact that where does the government get off sending my money to an NGO to pay for text messages to interfere in the sexual health of minor children who have parents? This is insane. What is going on here? People are fat, dumb, and happy. And that's not fat shaming, you leftist hate wanker. Fat, dumb, and happy is a phrase to say people are content with their Roku and Hulu and Netflix and satellite TV and cable TV and mobile telephones and their nice cars and their rich diets, which lead to obesity, and their comfortable lives, while our politicians and our bureaucrats are robbing us blind to destroy our society. This is a clear violation of parental rights. A clear violation of parental rights. Where does the federal government get off intruding into the rights of parents to raise their children in this fashion? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's always funny when the leftists reveal themselves to be racist and bigots. And here we are again. The Penguin. Jerry Nadler calls a spade. In other words, he reveals his own racism, his own bigotry. I've told you the story before about how I was a graduate student at Troy State University 20 years ago, and it was an online program, distance education, and in one of our courses, collaborating with my other students, one of the students said, well, we need illegal immigrants. Someone has to pick the strawberries. To which my response was, so your response to the criminal invasion of our country is your soft bigotry, saying that employers should be allowed to exploit undocumented workers, paying them below market rates, depressing other workers and taking jobs away while depressing the labor rate and paying them below a living wage because they're illegal. They can't speak back. So your soft bigotry is okay. You think it's okay to exploit foreign workers because they're foreign and illegal. Well, Jerry Nadler pretty much takes the same line, saying that if it wasn't for illegals, we can't pick the vegetables. Jerry Nadler says vegetables will rot if illegal immigrants aren't there to pick them. Democratic Representative Jerry Nadler of New York said Thursday that vegetables would rot in the ground if illegal immigrants weren't around to pick them up. We need immigrants in this country. Forget the fact that the farm vegetables would rot in the ground if they weren't being picked by many immigrants, many illegal immigrants. Well, Jerry, we don't need illegal immigrants to pick that. What we need is farmers and distributors to pay a reasonable wage, and then people will pick it. This is an insult. I picked vegetables. I mowed lawns. I cut timber. I picked berries. I baled hay. I milked cows. I herded pigs. I shoveled slop. Your bigotry against Americans is epic. We don't need illegal immigrants for labor. We need legal immigrants when we need them, not because they want to come here. Unbelievable. Hunter Biden. Yeah, haven't talked about Hunter much. His contempt resolution is set for a full House vote next week after he gets up and walks out of a hearing in a showboat performance. The votes to secure his contempt of Congress have already been found. The full House set to vote a floor vote on the criminal contempt resolution against Hunter Biden as early as next week, according to House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer of Kentucky. In a New York Sun interview he published on January 11th, he said the resolution will go to the House floor for a vote by the whole chamber next week. The Kentucky lawmaker added the votes to support holding President Biden's son in contempt have already been secured. A couple members out sick today. We have the votes. Okay. Well, so Hunter Biden will be found in contempt of Congress, but nothing will come of it. Now, this is how Congress has been reacting to the Houthi attack by Joe Biden. U.S. and UK's coordinated attack Thursday on the Iran-backed Houthi rebels has been met by members of Congress with a bipartisan mix of support, but also some unease over Biden's seemingly unilateral executive action that risks escalating the conflict. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky says he welcomes the coalition operations against the Houthi. Representative Ro Khanna of California, the 17th district, said the president's strikes in Yemen are unconstitutional. Untrue, Ro Khanna. You need to learn how to read the Constitution and public law. The president is the chief executive and the commander-in-chief of the military. The War Powers Act that Congress itself created in the 1970s gives the president this authority, which he already had. It reinforces it unknowingly by an inept Congress. Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky says only Congress has the power to declare war. That is true. That is true. Only Congress has the power to declare war. But the president, as commander-in-chief of the military, can take action without Congress to defend U.S. international interests. It's as simple as that, Mr. Massey. You don't know. How do people like this get elected? This, see me criticizing a Republican? Ruben Gallego, Democrat, Arizona, said the decision to strike the Houthis in Yemen is necessary to maintain stability and security in the Gulf, and that's actually correct. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene says the president must come to Congress for permission before going to war. Biden cannot solely decide to bomb Yemen. Well, I'm sorry, MTG, but he can. And he did. And so did Trump when he took out Soleimani. And so did Obama when he took out American citizens extrajudicially. Now, that was illegal. But he bombed people with drones all the time. These people are just showboating, political grandstanding. Representative Barbara Lee of California said, this is why I call for a ceasefire. That's why I voted for the war, against the war in Iraq. Violence only begets more violence. Yeah, okay. Thank you. You go back, sit down and shut up now, Representative Barbara Lee. Sit down and shut up in the corner. Violence begets violence. So Israel's response to the gang rapes, the executions, the breast removal, the nails driven into the vagina of women, to the burning of babies in stoves, to the cooking of babies in microwaves, to the torture and destruction that they wrought on civilians should be what? Just turn the other cheek? Shut up, Barbara Lee. You're an idiot. Idiots shouldn't be in Congress. Somebody vote her out this year. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas says strikes against the outlaws who have threatened our troops and terrorized our national shipping are long overdue. Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts says today's airstrikes send a clear and decisive message that we will not tolerate terrorism. Nancy Mace of South Carolina said this is where we should put party aside and stand for the oath we took. Congress alone decides if we go to war. I join my colleagues on both sides insisting we follow the Constitution. Well, you're an idiot and you're not following the Constitution, and you also are unfamiliar with the War Powers Act, so sit down and shut up. Hunter Biden pleads not guilty to his tax fraud charges. The guy's guilty of sin. Oh, he's going bald just like daddy there. Look at that. U.S. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, pled not guilty Thursday in federal court to tax charges stemming from business dealings that also prompted an impeachment probe of his father. The 53-year-old stands criminally accused of failing to pay $1.4 million in taxes between 2016 and 2019 while spending millions of dollars on drugs, escorts, exotic cars, and high-ticket items, and guns. 17 years in prison if convicted. Well, I'll tell you what, they better get the Hunter Biden trial and conviction underway and completed before the election in November, because if he's indicted and convicted by a federal court for tax evasion and gets 17 years, then Joe can pardon him before he leaves office in January of 2025. So I'm just saying, Hunter Biden really shouldn't try to run this trial out. He should get it over as quick as possible, get his sentences, conviction, so it can be pardoned by daddy before it's all over. Yeah. He can be pardoned by daddy before it's all over. Ladies and gentlemen, the racism continues unabated. Where's everybody going? What is going on here? Is there something wrong with the program? You're not liking what's going on? We had 100 people. We're at 65 here. Are people rushing over to Ronaldo? Is he on? What's going on? I feel a little betrayed here. Why are we constantly losing people here? Wow. What's going on here? Well, the racism continues unabated in the United States. The latest DEI, Johns Hopkins, a prestigious medical school in Baltimore, Maryland, one of the leading medical organizations on the planet, is a racist organization. Well, they hire racists, apparently. Johns Hopkins Hospital ignites firestorm with their DEI hit list. Anger is brewing against Johns Hopkins Medicine after its diversity chief labeled all whites, Christians, and men as privileged. Dr. Sharita Hill Golden, clearly a racist, the chief diversity officer for the entire Johns Hopkins hospital system, issued a smear in an internal Martin Luther King Jr. Day message to hospital employees that later shared on X. And here's a copy of this. Here it is. So she says, Happy New Year. Welcome to the January 2024 issue of the Monthly Diversity Digest. And she goes on to talk about things. She said, we look forward to working with you this year in the spirit of Dr. King and others. But it's not a spirit of Dr. King. It's more the spirit of the Klan. That's who she's talking about, the Klan and La Raza. Diversity is the word of the month. Privilege is a set of unearned benefits given to people who are in specific social group. You mean like equal opportunity or BEE? Privilege operates on personal, interpersonal, cultural, and institutional levels. You mean like the federal government? And it provides advantages and favors to members of dominant groups, blacks and other minorities, at the expense of members of other groups. In the United States, privilege is granted to people who have membership in one or more of these social identity groups. White people, able-bodied people, heterosexuals, cisgender people, males, Christians, middle or owning class people, middle-aged people, and English-speaking people. Privilege is characteristically invisible to people who have it. People in dominant groups often believe they have earned the privileges they enjoy, that everyone could have access to these privileges, only they worked hard for them. In fact, privileges are unearned, and they're granted to people in the dominant groups, whether they want those privileges or not, regardless of their state intent. Excuse me? You mean privileges like equal opportunity and unfair access to universities and government jobs? Do you mean privilege like broad-based black economic empowerment, which gives people unfair access to things that they've not earned based on their skin color? Wow. What a bunch of nonsense. What a bunch of racists. And this is what happens when you tolerate DEI. DEI. That is unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, honestly, are they serious? Are they serious? So in this story, let me read some of the comments from people. You can't help but laugh at the English-speaking people. What? So basically anyone who got through 5th grade is privileged. They can't be serious. Well, she is. In order to celebrate Martin Luther King Day, the DEI officer of Johns Hopkins decided to engage in rank racism, sexism, ageism, and anti-Christianity, all in one email to employees. What kind of sick people working in corporate offices these days? Good question. Black female chief diversity officers are more privileged than nearly everyone covered under that list. They paid far more than the average middle-class person. They have the privilege of being hired and treated above criticism because of their race and sex. Are you listening, Claudine Day? DEI stands for division, exclusion, and incompetence, aka communism. Every one of these racist, sexist clowns should be fired, not only for being a waste of money and pushing racist, sexist policies, but they're an affront to what meritocracy is and stands for in Western culture. Johns Hopkins University is proud to promote racism. They're actually doing everyone a big favor by being this blatant about it. Now people know not to send their kids there. This is the beauty of free speech that allows evil people to expose themselves. Exactly right. Elon Musk said discrimination on the basis of race, which DEI does, is literally a definition of racism. Exactly. Spot on, and I've been saying it forever. Ladies and gentlemen, I cautioned you and warned you, those of you still with me at this hour, I cautioned you and warned you in 2020 the hazard of keeping children out of school, in-person education, the social maladjustment, the educational falling behind, and gosh, all the Karens are discovering it now. 4 years later. The Wall Street Journal says when Rona hit, they were in diapers. So why are kindergartners struggling? Because you morons kept them out of school, you dingbats. Add young children to the list of students who need catching up after the pandemic, according to recent test scores. America's youngest students entered school this year with weaker math and reading skills compared with those before the pandemic, according to new data that is surprising some educators. Let me tell you something. If you're an educator and you're surprised by this data, you're a fraud. You need to be fired. I have been in education. I'm not in education now, and I was in education when I told you the consequences of this lunacy of shutting schools down with no justification whatsoever. There was no epidemiological justification whatsoever for that. There was none. No evidence to suggest that would do anything other than deprive children of a proper education and socialization with their peers. Critically important for who did I tell you? 4, 5, 6-year-old students entering school. Most important for them. And who's struggling? These kids now who were infants and toddlers that stayed home as well. Unbelievable. Morons. Any educator surprised by that is a complete fraud. They're not an educator. They're a fraud. Well, the rude, fake conservative, but now dressing up as a conservative every day, but very popular and attractive, Megyn Kelly launches a full-scale attack on Don Lemonhead after he announces his appearance on X. Megyn Kelly savages ex-CNN diva Don Lemonhead over his new show, He's Up. Many agree with the news that former CNN diva Don Lemon will be hosting a show on X with enthusiasm after his absence. The conservative journalist and podcaster, not a real conservative, savaged Lemonhead over his grand return, devoting a segment to a man she has frequently criticized on Thursday's edition of the Megyn Kelly Show on Sirius XM. And there's Eric has just given out 5. John Houthis got a membership. Congratulations. We got others coming up here. Thank you, Erica, for that. I think he's disgusting. He hates America. He hates Republicans, and I'm looking forward to this voice reemerging other than the market with 100. Laudi Monday. Other than the market with the 100% I plan to do. Well, yep, she savaged him. Absolutely. And Elon Musk says the use of the term. Hey, Veronica, congratulations. Elon Musk says the use of the term cis is heterophobic. And it is. It's intended as a slur, an insult to heterosexuals, the overwhelming majority of the population. Matthew Pattenden, thank you. Elon Musk is correct throughout all recorded time that our lifetimes, at least anyway, not recorded time in our lifetimes. And there's Michelle Fundameva. Congratulations. Yeah, it's people who are attracted to the opposite sex were known as heterosexuals. But a group of radical activists trying to demean the majority of the population, the vast majority of the population, coined this cisgender slur to go after people. And Elon Musk said that, and he's 100% correct. And he's being savaged by people on his own platform. Ex-owner Elon Musk dipped back into the cisgender engagement pool this week, where he shamed users using the word. In an apparently unprompted social media post, he went all in with his hatred for the word. It's a heterophobic word. Shame on anyone who uses it. One freaking commenter, the rabbit hole, agreed that Musk and then posted the results of an X poll where 78% of participants said it's a slur. Yep. Journalist Victoria Brownworth responded with a generally accepted definition of cisgender. Cisgender describes a person whose gender identity corresponds to their sex assigned at birth. She wrote, it's an opposite of transgender. It has zero to do with sexual orientation, and this is neither heterophobic nor homophobic. Please learn how to Google. And author Hank Green said, you got it. You've gotten so lost, my dude. Now, sex isn't assigned at birth. That's nonsense. Biology assigns your sex. Your XX, your XY chromosomes determine your sex. Or if you're a hermaphrodite, that's the same thing too. It's defined by your chromosomes, not by a doctor, not by you, not by some idiot using a slur to attack people. So journalist Victoria Brownworth is full of it. She's full of it. All right. Then the word N-word ends with an R. That's a word used by black folks, and there's no harm. So we can walk around saying that. And the K word in South Africa is a word for unbeliever. So that's the true definition of the word. So can we just use it? Can we walk around saying the K word hey, K, all over South Africa? No, you can't, because you go to jail. But the definition means unbeliever in Arabic. So why are you going to jail? Because it's used as a slur, you dingbat. You see these leftists, they come out with their nonsense. Total nonsense. Again, the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia is not the Confederate flag. However, it's been falsely appropriated to represent the Confederacy in a fashion that heralds the lost cause, and therefore it has become a symbol of hatred for many people. It's unfair. The swastika is not Nazi. It's from India and Denmark, where it was used as a symbol. It's an old Viking symbol and is also an old Aryan symbol in India. But unfortunately, the Nazis appropriated, and now it's seen as a symbol of hate. But it's still a symbol of fertility in other places. So nonsense. Nonsense. And that's it for the news, folks. It took us a while to get through that because of the little buffering we had at the beginning. But thanks for being here. And congratulations to those who got a membership, courtesy of Erica for buying 5 memberships. Thank you for that. Brian says, I reserved my opinion on Ronaldo. Well, I don't know where everyone else went, folks. How did we go from 165 and it corresponds with noon? We did drop down to 91 when I stopped. When I moved on to the news and stopped focusing on Israel. So that's understandable. We went from 107 to 91. We lost 16 people. But then we're at 90 until 12 o'clock. And I think Ronaldo must have started late because we were still at 90 and then we started dropping. Yep. So anyway. Just received 100-hour award. Thanks, Colonel. 100-hour award for what? What's a 100-hour award? Sedgefield, what's that about? You're welcome, I think. But what's that about? I don't know what a 100-hour award is. Let me see. By the way, I'm about to go over one. Come on, man. Oh, I am just 3 kilowatt hours away from generating a megawatt. A megawatt, folks. I'm about to get to a megawatt of generating electricity from the solar panels, which were put on November 2nd, December 2nd, January 2nd. 2 months and 10 days. And with any luck, I'll get there this afternoon. I'll get there this afternoon unless the cloud's coming because it's currently generating 2.59 kilowatts per hour. I'm at 7. I need 3, and I'll go over a megawatt. That's so cool. That's kind of cool, especially since I didn't pay for the panels. Dodgy Karens are especially crazy. Bufuk, says Hendo. I swear free speech has ruined society. How has free speech ruined society? I'm often in the background. It's serious, bad form to come into someone else's chat saying another channel is going live, irrespective of what is. Huh? It was my comment you're referring to. I said folks are leaving to change the subject. Chris often mentions the stream for Ronaldo appears. Huh? I don't know what that conversation is about. It's between Chris Wyatt and Keith Alderson. But let me just explain the reality here. Again, in the early days of this program, it was broadcast live when I started doing the news in 2020 at 5 p.m. South Africa time. That was during the lockdown. No one else in South Africa, Big Daddy Liberty, Paratus, Ronaldo, Morning Shot, or Renegade Reports back then, none of these folks were broadcasting at that time, mostly because people didn't want to broadcast at the time because that's when people get off work and they're driving home. So I found a slot to cover news in South Africa, and that worked well with around the world. That wasn't being covered by most people who were live broadcasting time, so I went with 5 o'clock. Well, I also was a viewer, an enthusiastic viewer of Morning Shot. A few months after I started doing that, Morning Shot, which had 4 times my subscriber base, almost 5 times my subscriber base, suddenly decided to start doing live streams, and they did it at the time that I was at. Well, they're a much bigger channel, and I also wanted to watch theirs. So I shifted my broadcast, without saying anything, the Morning Shot, to 6 p.m., which wasn't ideal. Like Beth, she's got kids at home. I almost never see Beth on here as a viewer because of that. I lost some viewers. So I set it at 6 o'clock. And it stayed that way from 2020 until last year. Last year, Ronaldo adjusted his program because 8 o'clock was a bit late. And he, by the time he finishes, he's taxed. He wanted it early. So he moved it to 7 instead of 8. Well, my program historically has gone at least an hour and a half on every broadcast. So as a consequence, when Ronaldo was doing streams, which until more recently was almost every day, that meant that when Ronaldo came on, I lost part of my audience. And that's fine. People are welcome to go watch whatever they want. Whatever they want. It's your prerogative. I have no claim to anybody watching my content. I'm grateful that you watch it. But I'm just trying to figure out why at the top of the hour, because it isn't always Ronaldo. In fact, I've said Ronaldo's not on, so where do people go? But at the top of the hour, we lost people. And the answer oftentimes, I think today Ronaldo has a live stream. So I think that's probably what's going on. And that's fine. I'm not lamenting people going away. I'm not calling them out. And it's also not rude for me to mention other broadcasts. If people want to go watch Ronaldo right now, go. If I drop down to 30 subscribers because you want to watch Ronaldo, go. You're free to do it. You can always come back and watch the end of this later on. So I'm just asking the question. It's a fair question to ask. With all the shenanigans that YouTube pulls on us, it's fair to ask these questions. Fair to ask these questions. So anyway, people shouldn't take offense to that. I'm not sure what the conversation between Chris and Keith is, and I don't know if I've resolved it by talking about this. But anyway, 7 p.m. is gold in South Area. It is, Chris Wyatt, and that's why my broadcast always continued past 7 p.m. And in the past, before other people moved to that hour, and no one was in that hour, I used to experience a larger audience at the top of the hour. It used to be when I got to the top of the 7 o'clock hour, after having been on since 6 p.m., my audience would grow. Now it drops. And that's the reason for the question. That's the reason for the question. That's the reason for the question. Anyway. Vilma says, thanks, Chris. For what? For what, Vilma? What did I do? What did I do? What did I do? All right. Time works out well in Arizona. Yeah, it works out very well in Arizona. Yep. Oh, for the news, you're welcome. My pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it. The conversation we had at the beginning of the news about Israel, South Africa, and the International Court of Justice, I enjoyed that quite a bit. What do you guys think of my hoodie? What do you guys think? This is pretty cool, huh? Ouch. Well, I think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. And it's a front zip hoodie. I like the front zip hoodies because you can open them up, if you're overheating. Nice. This is from the William Webb Ellis collection. And the Rugby shop still has some crap if you want to go get it, folks. It's out there, so feel free to go get yourself something before it's all gone. But good old Ronnie Lamola there. That guy can't hold a candle to most idiots in South Africa. He really is a special kind of fool. And he's in a job he really shouldn't be in. Really shouldn't be in that job. But most members of Cyril Ramaphosa's cabinet were picked not for their competence, but for their lack of threat to Cyril Ramaphosa or him placating. What's going on? Trump just put a tweet out. Now, this is what Trump just said. His son put this out on Twitter because Donald's not using Twitter. So let me get this straight. We're dropping bombs all over the Middle East again, where I defeated ISIS. And our Secretary of Defense, who just went missing for 5 days, is running the war from his laptop in a hospital room. Remember, this is the same gang that surrendered in Afghanistan where no one was held accountable or fired. It's the most embarrassing moment in the history of the United States. Now we have wars in Ukraine, Israel, and Yemen, but no war on our southern border. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Crooked Joe Biden is the worst president in the history of the United States. Well, I can't disagree with that argument. That's a pretty good argument there. Don Jr. posted that. It literally just got posted. Wow. Well, it didn't literally. Let's see, about 2 hours ago. Twitter's kind of slow giving me the data. Yep. No cross, no crown. What's this? A foodie. Okay. Sorry. It's I don't go on the Twitter all that often. So, best factual, unadulterated news on this channel. Let it play out. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Complimented your comment earlier that in the chat reference hoodie. Oh, thank you, Erica. Yeah, I like this hoodie, man. It's pretty cool. I'm really glad I got it for 70% off because, that inflation is killing us. So, killing me, killing you. That's what I mean by us. Anyway, been an interesting 24 hours. Lots of stuff happening here on this side of the Atlantic and trying to keep up with events as we continually to move inexorably towards conflict. It's interesting that George Bush started wars. Barack Obama started wars. Got a Nobel Peace Prize before he started the wars, for ending wars, which he never ended. He started wars. He started more than George Bush did. Donald Trump ended the wars, and Joe Biden is exacerbating and adding even more wars, bringing us back into conflicts. So now we have a conflict in Yemen. We have a conflict in Israel. We have a conflict in Ukraine. We have a conflict on our southern and northern borders. And we have a president asleep at the wheel. Interesting, to say the least. But that's the reality we live in, folks. That's the world we are living in. A world full of reprobates who don't care about the average people. You see this John Hopkins thing? It's ridiculous. People of privilege. That would be people who profit not based on their merit, not based on their scores, not based on their contributions, not based on their intellectual capacity and or deeds, but simply based on their genitalia and their skin pigmentation. These are immutable facts. I can't go to bed and wake up and be black. I can't go to bed and wake up and be a woman. So why should I be discriminated against? Someone who's black can't wake up and be white or as devastatingly handsome as I am. That's self-deprecating humor for those who don't get it. They can't wake up and be this way. They can't wake up with the genitalia. So why should they be punished for not being male, for not being white, for not being black, for not being a woman? This is lunacy. This person is making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in an institution that receives public support. To be a racist. It's everywhere. The rot is everywhere. 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 It's in all of our institutions. It's in our educational institutions. It's in our government. It's in our police forces. It's in our military. It's in our corporate boards. It is a cancer that must be excised from the body politic and from society. Utter nonsense. No common sense. I had a conversation with 3 people the other day, and I was talking about Barack Obama, and they were lamenting about how before Barack Obama, we don't recall any conversations about people being mistreated because of their skin color or not having a fair chance. Black home ownership was at an all-time high. Per capita income for black Americans was at an all-time high. Black unemployment was at an all-time low. And then along comes Barack Hussein Obama, and it all goes to crap. Chaco, a world war? No. Let's put this in perspective. In the Second World War, virtually the entire European continent was involved in the conflict, the exception being Sweden and Switzerland and Spain, Portugal. Sweden, Switzerland, Spain, and Portugal. The rest of Europe was in a war. Poland was invaded by Germany and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union criminally annexed the Baltic nations of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. The Soviet Union attacked Finland in 1939. The Germans attacked Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France. Italy was in the war. They attacked Albania. Then the Germans attacked Yugoslavia and Greece and Crete. The Germans attacked the UK. The UK attacked the Germans. The Germans invaded Norway. So the only countries that didn't get in conflict in that war, and eventually Bulgaria was drug into it, and Romania as well. And then thank you, J Legend Media, for subscribing. What's J Legend Media? That's pretty interesting. I'd like to learn about that. So Sweden was never in the conflict. Switzerland was never in the conflict. Spain shocked a lot of people, thought they'd come in on the side of the Nazis. And Portugal were out of the conflict. Everyone else was in it. But Spain and Portugal also had their shipping attacked and their borders endangered. North Africa was attacked. Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, all of those were involved in the conflict. The conflict also was in the Middle East. The Soviet Union was involved in the conflict. Iran was involved in the conflict. Japan, China, Manchuria, Korea, Burma, India. Liberia is involved in the conflict as a base for U.S. operations and radio transmissions. South Africans sent troops to the war. Zimbabwe sent troops to the war. All over Africa, just like in the First World War, colonial territories sent Africans to participate in the war. The entire Pacific Rim was in conflict. The Japanese attacked everything. Formosa, Vietnam, the Philippines, all the Pacific Islands. That's a world war. Right now, the war is confined to a few spots, and there are no major alliances jockeying. For instance, there was the Axis against the Western Alliance, and that's what played out around the world in that war. Today, we have NATO versus Russia, and that's the only major two conflated players going on. So, no. Yeah, Australia was also in the war, too. Yep. All the wars happening isn't technically a world war. New Zealand was in the war. So this so-called president is not even at the wheel in the basement. Yeah. Astazil says, it looks like China wants to invade Taiwan, like now. Oh, yeah, they definitely do. They're hell-bent on taking Taiwan back, and they have been for a long time. But now they're approaching the ability to do it. That's why it looks so serious. Well, make no mistake, it will be incredibly bloody conflict should it ever happen. Incredibly ugly. Yeah, autocorrect. I know, Grasshopper. Autocorrect. You meant New Zealand. Yep. Portugal and Spain, cheaper. They send cars on carriers weekend to Spain. Servicing much cheaper. I'm not sure what Sedgefield's talking about there. Not sure what you're talking about there. Don Jr., 7 p.m. is gold. Yeah, 7 p.m. is gold in South Africa. That's a statement of fact. Yep. Yep. And Chris Wyatt says, somehow I'm off in the background. It's serious bad form to come into someone else's chat saying that another channel is going live, irrespective. That's true, Chris, and I agree with 100%. Unless, the content creator is saying, hey, just go check it out, go to that channel. That's a different story. Let me see if I've gotten to that 1,000 yet. Oh, not quite there yet. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Remember when we had the Senate call, too? I've told this story many times, but not everybody knows it. Senate call, too. In 2020, when Big Daddy Liberty was down in Senegal, and the Boer-Legion was there. Boer-Legion was there. EFF was there, of course, and all these people were there. During the course of that event, which I was covering live from here in Pennsylvania, taking video feeds, taking Boer media feeds, taking comments from people sending it in, and giving context and explaining what was going on. In the course of that, a bunch of sycophants for a certain channel that no longer exists from Down Under came into my chat, and about 20 of them started, doing what Chris is talking about. Hey, Loving Life has got live. They've got people on the ground there. You should go watch that channel. Go to Loving Life. Check out Loving Life. They're live right now. I mean, talk about bad form. And you know way I handled this? I said, I kind of raised my temper. I said, fine, go. If you don't watch content here, you think you're going to find better content elsewhere, that's your prerogative. No one's holding your arm to be here. Feel free to go. I was at 3,800 viewers, I think, at the time when that happened. And about 200 people left with the next, boom, 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 boom. Went from 3,800 to 3,600. I'm like, okay, they took my advice. They left. So about 10, 15 minutes later, suddenly we were at 5,700 live concurrent viewers. Biggest audience I ever had at one time. 5,700 concurrent viewers. Why? Because they went there and the coverage was crap. It was just nonsense and hysterical idiocy and incoherent thought. And a lot of people must have said, I wasn't there. They must have said, oh man, this sucks. I'm going back to Chris Wyatt. And suddenly our audience grew to 5,700. Chris says, what is this planning to build army base in Finland, right on Russia's doorsteps? I don't know anything about building bases in Finland. I know that we have secured basing rights to existing Finnish military bases and the same in Sweden. And I've already covered the story, Chris, and I said it is highly inflammatory and not a wise move. There's no need for our forces to be training in Finland or Sweden. We can train with them in Germany. We can train with them in Poland. We don't have to go to Finland and Sweden. It's unnecessarily provocative. It's not going to start a war, but it can help you understand why the Russians are so defensive when people are constantly coming at them. So yeah, Chris, that's news I've reported on multiple times in the past several months, and I'm not aware of us building bases. I am aware of us getting basing access in Finland and in Sweden. The controversy going on now is that there's discussion of granting basing rights in the Åland Islands, where the Åland Islands are demilitarized, and they have been for over a century. And they better not try to put military... Look, I'll tell you what. If they had a military base there and I'd sign up to go work there, the Åland Islands are gorgeous. They're beautiful, fantastic location, lovely people. Almost all of them speak Swedish, of course, but it's part of Finland in the on the west coast of Finland. It's an amazing place. But there is no business having militarizations be demilitarized. It was once a place where the Russians, when they controlled Finland, built a huge fort that was never finished, and it was attacked during the Napoleonic campaigns, and it was mostly destroyed. But I've been to that big fort. The remains of it's still there in the Åland Islands. Did I answer your question? Oh, Paulie's been in the back of the class enjoying the stream. Such good insight and views of the news and current affairs. Well, thank you for that, Paulie. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. In the event that South Africa's ICJ case succeeds, do you think there will be consequences from West, like AGOA perhaps? Grasshopper, I don't know what you mean by succeed. You're going to have to define succeed, because what's going to happen likely is that the ANC will claim victory regardless of what the court says. Israel, there's any rational person, there's no way that Israel comes at it, but the court has no jurisdiction, so it's just a silly thing. And even if the court issues a judgment against Israel, who's going to enforce it? Has anybody enforced the judgment by the ICJ against China for the South China Sea? Nope. They just ignored it, and the world moved on, ignoring the court judgment. So if South Africa succeeds. I think South Africa is going to claim success regardless of what, sorry, my foot is itching here, regardless of what comes out of this. So there should be consequences like AGOA. South Africa is not eligible for AGOA. One of the key tenets of AGOA is, well, you got to have good governance standards, this, that, and the other. But one of the key tenets is respect for property rights. It's clearly spelled out in the public law. A country must have protections and respect for property rights, for private property. But South Africa seeks to abrogate that with the expropriation without compensation, which is wholly unnecessary. South Africa's government already has in its constitution the ability to expropriate property, land specifically, with compensation. But they want to steal and they want to punish their political. But look what they're doing to Donald Trump. They want to have a $370 million judgment. What's the basis of that? Well, that equals 70% of his corporation's cash reserves, which have been frozen now. They can't touch them. So they want to destroy Donald Trump. There's no basis for that $370 million. It isn't like they made $370 million off of anything. They want to throw that on top of that to take all his cash and to bankrupt the Trump organization. And even Forbes is lying about Trump. Trump is worth $2.6 billion. What kind of nonsense is that? The guy's north of $5 billion easily. Yeah, no, it's a disgrace. That's what's going on here. Mark Sayers. Hey, Mark, I wonder what would have happened if South Africa did not dismantle the nuclear bombs before ANC took over. Perish the thought. Perish the thought, Mark Sayers. Perish the thought. I mean, no nuclear weapons in the hands of the ANC is a good thing. The death penalty not in the hands of the ANC is a good thing. Yep. NATO pushing the envelope makes Putin more popular in Russia. Indeed, it does, Hendo. You've hit the nail on the head. It does make him more popular. Yep. Tens of thousands of tourists will exclude South Africa from the travel plans foreseeable. Well, they already have. I mean, it's not, I mean, look, what have we had happen here recently? We had an American doctor who works in, at Cornell, who was shot and robbed at gunpoint, carjacked in the Cape Flats because he was driven there by GPS. He followed his Google Maps or Waze or whatever it was. We have had a British renowned physician executed during the taxi strike when he made the wrong turn and missed Airport Approach Road in Cape Town. We've had a German female tourist stabbed to death for her purse that was stolen. We've had hundreds of people robbed on Signal Hill and Table Mountain National Park. This is just in the Cape Town area, just in the past few weeks, let alone everywhere else. And that's one of the main, Kruger and Cape Town are the main tourist destinations in South Africa for international tourists. And both have become death traps for international tourists. I'm sorry, I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, but this is true. Does anybody think that people in Germany and Netherlands and the UK are not hearing these stories of the murder of their tourists, of the robbing of their tourists? I'm not trying to denigrate South Africa. I'm simply stating the facts. Now, we could sit here and extrapolate and go, well, that's a dozen incidents and there have been 1.6 million tourists to come in. That means that's not 0.1. That's not the point. Anytime it happens, it's highly inflammatory and people are making plans to go elsewhere. Despite the legacy media and News 24's lies about, oh, tourism's up, international rivals are up. Really? They might be up, but how high would they be if it wasn't for the crime wave in South Africa? How high would they be if it wasn't for the blatant racism of the South African government? How high would they be after this, after people see just what a fraud the ANC is? Could be a lot higher. Could be a lot higher. Chris, the Wall Street Journal has become a captured publication. It's no longer a reliable, objective, centrist, or center-right publication reporting on news. Read their headlines. I've talked about this endlessly. I have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal so I can break apart their news for you. Let's go and see what their stories are. Okay? This is the Wall Street Journal right now, at this very moment. This is their splash page. Okay? American finances defied the skeptics, banks earnings show. So they're running a story pro-Biden's regime, telling us consumers and businesses are in good shape. Then they put a little headline down here that Citigroup plans to cut 20,000. A weight loss drug changed my life. This is a news publication for business. Why is a story from the life section here is an essay in the center of the page? Stocks are forever. Doesn't mean now's the time to buy them. Telling people not to buy stocks. Trump hold on rural America. I'm flying in America. Okay. Flying in America has never been safer. For So these are the news. Let's look at their business news headlines and see what comes up. Inside Gucci's quest for older, richer customers. Okay. Tesla production, BlackRock to buy. Okay. Well, today's not a particularly egregious day for the Wall Street Journal, but many days it is. So not bad. But you're right. The Wall Street Journal is attacking Trump. They're leading the charge against Elon Musk. And it's bizarre that they're doing. They're also falsely reporting or misleading readers about the economy and about economics and about the banking sector. There should be an article there talking about Jamie Dimon cautioning the country about 2024. There's no story there. Jay Legend Media says, should black FBA Americans get reparations that has been owed? Jay Legend Media, again, I'd like to find out who you are, what you do. Do you have like your own presence? I don't know what FBA. What is FBA Americans? I don't know what FBA Americans are. What does that mean? What are FBA Americans? Hey, Deborah Olivier. Wow, good to see you again. Your FBI and CIA is captured. Yeah, Asad Zil. I cannot disagree with you. The FBI, certainly. I don't know about the CIA. It appears the Houthis are at least threatening terrorist action now in London. I suppose it's no surprise. Not sure if New York is also in their sights. Probably DC is in their sights. All right, so Jay Legend is, I don't know what FBA Americans, what does that mean? Friends with benefit? I'm sorry. Oh, thank you, Jay Legend. Thank you for that. Is this John Legend? No, the musician? No, thank you. Foundational Black Americans. I haven't heard that. I haven't seen that acronym before. That has been owed. How are they owed? How is a Black American born in 1964 when I was born owed reparations? Were they denied access to university? Were they denied access to public school? Were they charged higher rates of taxation than I was? Were they denied an opportunity? No. What reparations? The only people that anyone should have considered giving reparations to would have been anyone who was enslaved. But they're all dead. This nonsense that people are the product of what happened 160 years ago is ludicrous. It ties into this ridiculous narrative that black people have no agency. Really? Then how did the guy that founded Black Entertainment Television become a billionaire, William Johnson? How did Oprah become a multi-billionaire? How did Barack Obama become a billionaire? How is 65% of the NFL black, but 12% of the population is black? The starting salary for the National Football League is over $450,000. I don't know what it is because I haven't looked at it in a couple of years, but it's probably $500,000 now. Everybody who signs gets $500,000 a year. That is 4 or 5 times what the average American makes. 78% of the National Basketball Association is black. Who is holding people back? Nobody's holding anybody back except the government with its racist policies and its nonsense. Let's just go back to the most obvious thing, which is a conversation I've had multiple times the last couple of days because we have an election coming up here in Pennsylvania soon. I've had this conversation with people. Our primaries on April 23rd for the Republican Democratic Party here in Pennsylvania. So this whole bigotry and racism of claiming that black Americans don't have IDs. In other words, the argument that a identification to vote is racist. Now, how is that racist? Well, the argument they make is black folks are disproportionately likely to not have identification, which is just sheer nonsense. There's no evidence of that. Where's the proof of it? And I have a solution too. Where's the proof that black Americans don't have ID cards? Where? Show me the studies. Show me the research. Show me the evidence. And if you find it, then we'll address it. But what about the racism and bigotry of claiming that? Because here's the thing. When I go to the liquor store, which is down the road here, I don't buy stuff, but occasionally I buy it for others. There's black folks there. What do you have to present in order to buy alcohol and be 21 years of age in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? Photo identification. When I go to the store where they sell cigarettes and tobacco products, people are buying them. I see black folks buying tobacco products. What do you have to have? Photo identification. When I go to the bank and people in front of me are cashing checks and depositing money, what do you have to have? Photo ID. Guess what? They're black. When I go to a clinic and there's black folks there, they go up. What do they ask for? Photo ID. You get the picture? When people go to CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid to get their prescription medication, what do they have to provide? Photo ID. When you go to university and appear and you go to enroll and get your photo ID from the university, what do you have to provide? Photo ID. So, How is it racist? And how is it that black folks don't have photo ID to vote, but they have photo ID to buy alcohol, cigarettes, deposit checks, cash checks, go to medical facilities? The logic is in there. That's just racist to make the claim that black Americans are too lazy, too stupid, or lack agency to secure an identification card issued by a government authority. Saying that black Americans lack agency is what you're saying, and that's racist in and of itself. What a ridiculous claim that black Americans lack agency. Only a racist would make a comment like that. Black Americans are full of wherewithal and drive and ambition. The traffic light was invented by a black American. Agricultural advances by George Washington Carver, black American. Early aviation pioneers, black Americans. This racism to divide America, this bigotry, and this intentional willful ignorance about the history of this country and the so-called black history, which isn't black history, it's American history, by not even knowing the history of black Americans and lying about it, is disgraceful. And oh, by the way, just throw that out. Let's just talk about solutions. The leftists simply want to eliminate voter ID. Why? They gleefully give billions of dollars abroad to conduct elections in Iraq and Afghanistan and all over Africa, demanding that people show photo ID and then put ink on their thumb to prove they voted to secure their elections. But here, we don't need photo ID for elections, according to the leftist. You see the hypocrisy there? And let's just talk about, they don't offer a solution. They just eliminate the law and undermine the security and integrity and sanctity of our elections. But how do you actually address this? If black people, let's take the supposition and the racist comment that these leftists make, that black people can't get IDs. Let's assume that that's true. How do you fix that? Well, not by weakening the law, but by getting photo ID to people you claim can't get it. So you hire vans, you canvass neighborhoods where you claim people don't have ID, you offer them a free ride as scheduling of their convenience during business hours, you drive them to the facility, the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, or whatever issues identification in your state. And every state issues identification, even if it's not a driver's license, just identification card. And then you pay the fee. And you bring them a box lunch. And then you take them home. And voila, all the people that you claim don't have photo ID suddenly have photo ID. So they too can vote with photo ID. It's all a scam. All right, let's see. John Legends put a lot of comments in here. Let me read them. Blacks are being used by others to make money. Exactly right. Al Sharpton, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the Black Lives Matter. All these clowns are simply using black Americans. Joe Biden, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. What is that nonsense? America is racist. No, America is not racist. Our government has racist policies, and there are racists amongst us. But America is not racist. Come on, John. You can't make that allegation. That's ridiculous. I'm an American. I'm not a racist. You can't claim our country is racist. You're missing the mark. I think you want to make a statement, but that's not a statement you're trying to make. You're living on an island if you think America is not racist. I'm not living on an island. I'm living on terra firma in central Pennsylvania, and there's no island near me. Well, there's City Island in the Susquehanna located up the road there where the Harrisburg Senators play, but there's no island here. That's a good 20 minutes from here. Seems as though racism in America has a dark agenda. Manaj says leftists hijacked the American civil rights movement to help illegal immigrants. Yeah, they have. Just like activists have hijacked the gay rights movement for the trans. That voter ID is a scam. Voter ID is a scam. That's a fact. You're going to okay, John. I'm not sure if John is trolling or what's going on here. How is voter ID a scam? Now, I'm curious now. How is voter ID a scam? How is it a scam? Or actually, he might be supporting my argument. I don't know because the statement's unclear. He might be saying that the story about requiring photo ID, calling it racist is a scam, or he might be saying that requiring. So I'm not sure. You got to help me out there. America is a continent. Yeah, well, it's a big part of a continent. Canada is also part of this continent. Mexico, North America. But yeah, we're part of a continent, but we're continental wide. That's for sure. Generation Z, victims, all of them. Exactly, Deborah, Olivier. They're all victims. Someone has hurt them. Someone has taken from them. And guess what? They all have $1,200 cell phones. They have $40,000 cars. They all eat like maniacs. They go where they want. They vacation, yet they're oppressed. I'm talking about Americans. Unbelievable. People who claim poverty and then have direct TV, satellite television. That's not poverty. Poverty is no television. Poverty is no electricity because you can't pay the bill. Poverty is food stamps because you can't buy food. Poverty, well, and being actually legitimately needing food stamps. Poverty is your kids going to school and getting free lunch like I did because you have no money to pay for their lunch or to make them a lunch. That's poverty. That's poverty. And that poverty doesn't even remotely equate to poverty in Congo or in Bangladesh. But that's poverty. Not this nonsense of people walking around wearing, Levi's jeans or wearing freaking, what's that new shoe brand everyone likes so much? I can't think of the name of it. It's a ridiculous looking tennis shoe. But, wearing that stuff or wearing, Tommy Hilfiger shirts and go, oh, I have no money. We have no money because you're irresponsible. You have no money because you make poor choices in life. You have no money because you do not save seed corn for the future. You don't have money because you've been discriminated against or because you're being treated unfairly. Who told you to go behind the bandstand and open your legs or to stick your twanger in somebody's legs and produce a child and then have a child when you're 16? No one twisted your arm. Who told you to have 6 children? No one twisted your arm. Who told you to drop out of high school? No one twisted your arm. Who told you to do anything in life? Who forced you to do those things? Those are your personal choices. And personal choices have consequences. You can rise, you can level out, or you can sink based on your choices. Now, there are systemic problems for everything. If it wasn't for personal income tax, I might be a wealthy man, but it's not. Income tax is a horrible way to impoverish people. And every year we pay a tremendous amount of money to corrupt governments that misuse it. Anyway. So I wanted to ask a question about the U.S. open border debacle. Illegal immigrants are flowing the U.S. from Southern America and can literally walk across border. But my question is, if I fly to the U.S. and can just walk through immigration without having to show my passport, if not, isn't that a little unfair? Well, of course it's unfair, Grasshopper. That's the point that I and others are making. It's the point that I and others are making. Again, millions of people have entered this country legally, and they're welcome here. Congolese, Swiss, Finns, Russians, Taiwanese, Filipinos, even some Iranians, South Africans. You're welcome here. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you spending your money here. If you come to fill a critical job need, thank you for helping put a gap in our labor if you're here legally. If you're going to our universities and contributing to our body of knowledge, thank you. You're welcome. We appreciate it. This country thrives off of immigration. Legitimate immigration. But people walking to our border, crossing it illegally, not presenting themselves at a border post, and then destroying their identification or abandoning it are not immigrants. They're not migrants. They're not tourists. They're not business people. They're not, as Nikki Haley says, they're just good people who want to raise their family. They have kids. We shouldn't disrespect them. Well, maybe they shouldn't disrespect us and our sovereignty by invading our country. Oh, but they come from poor places. So what? We have poor people in America. Oh, but they just want a better life. And they want a better life and bring their stupidity here? What are all these pro-Hamas demonstrations shutting down roads, blocking highways, causing trouble all over this country? This isn't being done by people in Harrisburg, and by people in Hagerstown, by people in Omaha. It's being done by people who've immigrated here illegitimately and then demand, by and large, not exclusively, by and large, and demand that we do things for their broken countries. How about they go back to their broken? This thing drives me nuts. Liberians going to Congress. We need more money for Liberia. America is historical responsibility. We don't have responsibility to Liberians. We have nothing to do with it. A private venture. The American Colonization Society encouraged black Americans free and then later former slaves to immigrate to Liberia in the 19th century. They did it. They arrived there. And what did they do? They colonized it. They imposed their foreign political system and cultural belief system and religious system on the people who lived in what is known as Liberia. That's colonization. They were mixed race and black. Still colonization. Their descendants today live by the tens, if not hundreds of thousands in Minneapolis, in Chicago, in DC, in the bedroom communities of Maryland. And what do? They go to Congress and demand that we give money to Liberia. And we've done it. $3 or $4 billion now since the end of the Civil War. It's not our responsibility to fix your broken place. While they sit in Hyattsville, in Rockville, in DC, because they've been successful, they're talented, with high-paying jobs, with lots of income, the ability to travel anywhere they want, anytime, being given refuge here illegitimately by an illegal extension of their refugee status well beyond the period they should have got. We're talking about people being here since the 1990 Civil War, 30 years under refugee status. And they lobby DC with their money and their resources, telling us to support. How about you pick up your butt and you go back to Liberia and you fix your broken country and stop sucking off of us? It's not our problem. And if you want to live here, it's no longer your problem. Stop drawing us into Gaza and Judea and Afghanistan and Iraq and Venezuela and Cuba. If you want to fix their problems, do it with your own resources, not with my tax dollars. It's got nothing to do with any government, who or I am or what country I see. Huh? To sell your info and not cutting you in. Huh? Spiker, what are you talking about, man? I don't understand. What's a stereotype, Jay Legend? Only businesses must pay. No, I disagree entirely, Spiker Owen. I don't have a problem with paying income tax. I have a problem with the unjust progressive tax system that America has. All Americans who have income should pay 10% of their wages to the government max. In California, the state imposes over 10% on middle class plus the federal government. People shouldn't be paying more than 10% of their income to the government. If government can't function on 10%, then there's a problem with it, and the head needs to be cut off and it needs to be fixed. Businesses should never pay income tax. They're not living entities. They're businesses. They create jobs. They innovate. They build infrastructure, homes. They employ millions of people. Businesses should not be paying income tax. If I were president, the federal income tax on corporations wouldn't be lowered back to 21% like Trump did. It would be lowered to 0%. The amount of money the federal government makes off of government, federal, corporate income tax is a few $100 billion a year. A few $100 billion. They wouldn't miss it. They just have to rein in spending. Corporations should never pay taxes. That's passing the buck. Individuals who are citizens should be responsible for funding their self-defense, for funding their common needs. And 10% flat tax is fair. Everybody. Now, you're going to say that's not fair to people who make less than $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 or $50,000. There can be exemptions. If you make $30,000 and you have 3 children, you should be able to exclude all your income from income tax. And that gives those people a fair shake. But Warren Buffett should be paying 10% of his income every year in taxes, as I should. There you go. Otherwise, tax must afford more than one vote, one person. Nope. That's why it should be 10% flat. I wish I could go and work, but taxes aren't the basis of voting, folks. Paying taxes doesn't give you the right to vote. That's lunacy. That's what the left says. Well, these illegal immigrants pay taxes. They should get a vote. No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't have any vote. They're not citizens. Citizenship conveys voting, not taxation. I wish I could go to work in UK, EU, and Australia, but I can't because I can't work legally there. Yeah. Ona Karabets Motong is back. Hi. So you would vote for Trump if he would be the presidential candidate? Yes, I've said that unequivocally, Ona Karetse. Absolutely. The only other candidate that even remotely has anything worth listening to is Vivek Ramaswamy, and he will not be the presidential. If he was the guy and he won, I'd pick for him. Yeah. I mean, what are the Democrats going to offer me? Joe Biden? That's not a choice. It's not a choice. You see, the problem is I don't like Trump, but I don't believe the lies. I deal in facts. All the lies about Trump. Look, he's crass. He's an ogre. He's impolite. He's disrespectful. But at least he does it to your face. Joe Biden does it obliquely. Calling people racist. If you don't vote for me, you're not black. What the hell is that? You can't own a 7-Eleven in Delaware unless you have a slight Indian accent. What is that? What is that? That's nothing but bigotry and hatred. He does it obliquely. He thinks he's funny. And his hatred of Christian whites is epic. It's unbelievable. No, it's, yes, I've never denied that. I said I'd vote for him. But again, I don't like the guy. I mean, that's pretty clear. Yep. So where was that there? Yeah, so Ona Karabetsa, I hope that doesn't surprise you and you like don't want to listen to me anymore. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. Yep, if he's the presidential candidate for the Republican Party, he'll get my vote. Yep. The entire witch hunt against him is the folks who are just unwilling to suspend the emotion and listen. Look, Donald Trump was a target because he shocked the Democrats who assumed that Hillary Clinton was going to be president. She was a thoroughly dislikable character and an evil shrew of a person. And voters saw that, and they didn't vote for her. And it shocked the Democrats to their core. So they filed 350 lawsuits between 2017 and 2020 to undermine the integrity of our election system. And they got away with it because people were asleep at the wheel. Because all of our attention was focused on Russia, 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 with the fake Russia collusion narrative. A dossier full of lies. Donald Trump peed on prostitutes in a hotel. Remember that? Fictional, made up. But the media ran with it like it was the truth. And we actually had an impeachment over that nonsense. A political trial over a dossier cooked up by a disgraced British intelligence agent, paid for by the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign to smear Donald Trump. That was the pretext to violate the constitutional rights of Carter Page, a patriotic American former naval officer, who, by the way, was spying for the CIA. He was a government operative. He was a source for the CIA on things going on in Russia. And when the corrupt FBI, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and all those clowns went to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to get a warrant on Carter Page so they could spy on the Trump campaign, they lied to the judge. They told the judge on the 3 that he wasn't a government agent. They left it unmarked. So their cooked up lies, the fruit of the poisonous tree, was used to gain access to Carter Page, who wasn't even their target because he was their agent. They knew he was providing information to the CIA. They jeopardized his life. They got an illegitimate warrant to spy on him and used that to get to General Flynn, whom I also don't like. He's a thoroughly reprehensible person, but he committed no crime. The lunacy of making the argument that the incoming director of national security in the transition period after an election, if this was before the election, they would have an argument. This is after the election when Trump won. They're arguing that the incoming national security advisor has no right to speak to a foreign ambassador in the diplomatic community in Washington, D.C. Of course they have a right. You don't go from one day to the next and boom, you're in charge, and suddenly you have relations with all the diplomatic community. What kind of moron comes up with that garbage? The whole thing is a fraud. And everything that's flowed from that, the phone call to Ukraine, the overstating the value of this, the insurrection, the Georgia case, this is all fraud perpetrated on the American people around the world by demonic people in politics. Donald Trump is a thoroughly dislikable individual. But any honest person would say he was an incredibly successful conservative president in 4 years, despite treason within his own party and in the Democratic ranks in Congress and in the media. It's unbelievable. This is not a defense of Donald Trump. This is a defense of the truth. The truth doesn't matter in the world anymore. People make whatever crap they want up about people. Look at the hate wankers from down under. Oh, the so-called colonel's a CIA agent. That's slander. Unfounded. No fact base whatsoever. And they get away with that bullshit. And then the hate wanker from freaking Amsterdam. Oh, the so-called colonel is a white supremacist and a Klan member and a fat shamer. Oh, total bullshit. And people get away with those. That's a crime, by the way. It's a crime, slander. Libel is a crime. The world is sick. It needs an enema. Badly. Menage a Trois says Liberia was a scam to get newly freed slaves to leave the U.S. Factually incorrect, Menage a Trois. Factually incorrect. When did the American Colonization Society start? When did it start? I think it was 1820s. Let's just double check to make sure. Ah, yes, 1822, Menage a Trois. When was slavery ended in America? When did we end slavery? 1865. 43 years after the American Colonization Society was formed in 1817. That's even worse. 1817. It was for free African Americans, free black Americans to go back, not for former slaves. Some were former slaves who've been freed in wills and such, but slavery wasn't ended as an institution until decades after black Americans went to Liberia. It's no scam. No scam. Now, if you want to make the argument that some racist white people were behind it, that's a separate argument. But you're not going to tell me that it was a scam to get newly freed slaves. There were no newly freed slaves until 1865, my brother. 1865, 1817, 27, 37, 47, 57. 48 years later is when slavery ended in America. Black Americans were long established in Liberia before there were freed slaves, newly freed slaves. Come on, dude. Come on. Don't fall for it. Do the history. You're a pretty smart guy, Menage a Trois. That's a propaganda line told by people. Again, we want to talk discussion, talk about, well, maybe it was an organization that was, it's like the Marcus Garvey Back to Africa movement. Well, his big backers were white racists. Well, there's an argument that can support that, but that's not the same thing. Marcus Garvey came decades later. The American Colonization Society was in 1817 that they formed. They went to Liberia in 1822. Nearly 50 years before the slaves were freed. It just doesn't make sense. Ona Karabetsa Motong gave applause. What's the applause for? All right. Mark Sayers says, I missed that. You should be allowed to vote, number of votes according to tax paid. That way you can have a say. If you're a bum, you can't have a say. Mark, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. Citizenship conveys voting, in my view. And not everybody is a billionaire. Billionaires shouldn't have outward influence just because they're billionaires. You shouldn't be rewarded because you inherited a fortune. That's not fair. Or even if you built a fortune. You should vote based on your citizenship. So we disagree on that one. Hey, G. Sawyer. Colonel, are you going to watch the Duplessis Strickland fight? No, I don't watch boxing. I lost interest a long time for it. But thank you for asking, Grasshopper. What's your take on RFK Jr.? Menage a Trois, I've talked about RFK Jr. many times. He's a very successful lawyer. Unfortunately, has a physical impediment with that gravelly voice that's a consequence of an affliction he has, which really affects his speech. It's a shame because he's a smart guy, but people don't take him seriously because of that. RFK Jr. Is a person that I can't come around to agreeing with on most issues, but he's an honorable guy, and he's being excluded by the corrupt Democratic Party and by the media, who dislike him because he called out their jab nonsense. So, yeah, he's decent. Oh, Ona Karabetse Motong says, no, it doesn't. I like Trump. Well, I'm glad you like Trump, but I don't like him. I don't like him at all. I'd work for him, and I respect that if he offered me a job as Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State. But I'll vote for him, no question. No. Only if South Africans could only be smart for once and vote DA. Well, Ona Karabetse Motong, I'm not going to argue for South Africans to vote DA. A lot of people have issues with DA, but I am going to argue and encourage South Africans not to vote for the ANC, the EFF, or a few other parties. And I won't mention them right now. So I'm still trying to interview some of them. Spikeron says, if you met Rishi Sunak in a park, would you lend him money? No. 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 Politics has always been a dirty game. It is. It's a vile game. It's a blood sport too. Pay attention. Vivek doesn't have the balls or smarts to fight the swamp. At least he's a VP apprentice. Okay, Chris. All right. Trump likes Tyson. He does like Tyson. I met Mike Tyson. Did I tell you guys that? When I came back from South Africa last year, I was at the airport in Chicago. And who did I walk up to but Mike Tyson? I got Mike Tyson in a photograph with a pretty cool picture. Yep. I've noticed a character gets missed. Can't recall if others in the chat. Character seems like a digital glitch somewhere. It might be your keyboard. Our grandparents are slaves of the ANC. Well, there you go. There you go. Greek were criminal slave traders trying to cheat some buyers with gorillas. What? I never heard that before. Never heard that story before. Wow, we've been on for 2.5 hours, folks. I didn't realize it had gone that long. We got 104 likes. We got some super chat. Courtesy of Eric, we got 5 new members. We picked up a subscriber or two. And the subscribers really matter right now because YouTube is playing its games like it typically does periodically. And I am gaining subscribers, and then they're stripping them all away, other subscribers, and I wind up in a net loss. And so since I got the 753 subscribers, 13,753, it's been a downward slide for the last month, and the channel is just languishing. It's unfortunate. Okay, you changed my mind about tax, but of course billionaires pay tax, Marks. Of course they pay. Yeah. So, but you don't pay it on your assets. That's insane. So these idiots like in California putting their excise tax, which is a wealth tax, on people's, but that's insane. So I have to pay tax on my underwear, on the rolls of toilet paper in my house. I mean, that's what they could claim. You should only pay tax on income. Income is a consequence of labor or of work or of investment. So if you contribute to the economy, you should pay tax on it because you're benefiting from the economy and its infrastructure. That's just a statement of fact. And its education system to different degrees. So you should pay tax. We should all pay 10%, in my view. 10% flat tax. 10%. I'll pay that. And quite frankly, until a few years ago, I would actually be paying more with a flat tax. But now, because I'm being overtaxed as self-employed, I'd actually come out ahead. So in the interest of full disclosure, if it were flat tax now, it would be to my benefit. But for my entire adult life, the 10% flat tax would actually have been disadvantaged for me. I would have had to pay more tax as a middle-income person because I wasn't paying it. I was getting tax advantages, the breaks that rich don't get. And I'm not rich now, but now I'm self-employed. And self-employed people are really discriminated against. I have to pay 28% of my income to the federal government, 3% to the state of Pennsylvania. That's 31. Then I have to pay 18% to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So that's 48% of my income before I spend a penny is sucked up by corrupt government authorities. Now, on top of that, I have a home mortgage, and I have to pay thousands of dollars every year in property taxes to support the local schools and to support the township. Throw that on top of the 48% of my income I've already lost, and now we're talking 58% of my income is gone. 58%. Before I buy anything, I'm down to 42 cents on every dollar. And I'm not a wealthy person. I'm middle income, maybe a little bit upper middle income. Now I go buy fuel, petrol at the station. Pennsylvania has the second highest tax on a gallon of fuel in the country. I pay on average 58 to 70 cents more a gallon here than I would 30 miles south of here, 50 kilometers in Maryland, which doesn't have the same rates. Regardless of what the market prices are, I always pay that surcharge. So I go fill up my tank, and in that tank, I'm paying probably right now about 20% tax on that. Then I go to the store. Pennsylvania has sales tax and local taxes in some jurisdictions. I pay another 6 to 8% in taxes for the things I buy. Now, there are exclusions. Food is excluded in supermarkets. Clothing is excused in the state, which is nice. But I pay those taxes. By the time there's anything left for me to save and invest, I'm before I pay for my living expenses. I mean, look at my cable bill. Nearly half of it is taxes and fees. My phone bill is 1/3 taxes and fees. My natural gas bill has taxes. My electricity bill has all kinds of surcharges and taxes, which I can't even explain half the time. We are taxed to death. You take all those taxes, and a rough estimate, I will tell you that I am lucky to see 30 cents on the dollar in my pocket. And from those 30 cents on the dollar, I have to survive. All the rest of that goes to support governments that bomb the Houthis, that allow our borders to be invaded, that force us to pay for people who shouldn't be here, that create racist policies against Americans. And you wonder why people are upset? Or you wonder why people are upset? 30 cents on the dollar is mine for my hard work and my labor. And from that, I have to pay twice as much now for my groceries than I did when Trump was president. I have to pay 40 or 50% more for gasoline than I did when Trump was president. My electric bill is double what it was when Trump was president, just 3 years ago. Not to mention flying, I told you that. My first trip back to South Africa, I got a ticket for $800. My second trip, it was $1,200. The last trip, it was $1,800 for the same flight. Unbelievable. Eminem said, Mike, you really knocked... Okay. A while ago, YouTube stopped me from commenting. I even saw my comments under a different... That's... Okay, that's strange. You would not have liked the Labour PM in the UK back in the early 87. Yeah, Harold Wilson was a disaster. 100% tax on company owners. Destroy the entrepreneurial segment of society. They did. Chris Wyatt membership. Thank you, Chris. 23 months. I really appreciate that. So why don't you move? To where, Acid Zill? Where to? There's only one country in the world I can think of other than some small outliers like the Cayman Islands, the Bahamas, and things like that. There's only a couple places in the world where I can think of that don't treat citizens like this. Chile, where they have a flat tax, where they have a private pension system. Chile. So why don't I move? Why should I have to move? Why shouldn't I stay here and fight to fix what's broken, Acid Zill? I'm not attacking your question, but it's kind of a silly question. Where should I move to? Switzerland? Finland? I could move to Finland. I wouldn't mind that. Taxes land, taxes bed, tax the table which he's fed. Taxes tractor, taxes mule. Teach him taxes are the rule. Taxes work, taxes pay. He works for peanuts anyway. Taxes, okay. Yep, taxes go. Okay, yeah, cool. Alaska. Alaska's in the United States. Still has 28% federal income tax. Still has 18% Social Security and Medicare tax for self-employed people. So we're still talking 48%. That doesn't change anything. Alaska will pay me $3,000 a year from the residence fund once I'm a qualified resident. That's not going to offset those taxes. But Alaska's a good choice. I like Alaska. The question is how many American citizens are going to be sent to the Middle East again, and it was worth it. I don't think we're going to send anybody there other than the Navy that's there now. Real Renew. Google doesn't like my 2 accounts. Okay. South America is rich in mystery. Bulgaria is 10% tax per year on all earnings. Okay, Carlos, that's interesting. But do they have free speech and a modern economy and safety? And more importantly, do they have the hot Canadian goalkeepers? Some of you might get that reference. Anyway, one of the big places tried to collect Plowman, or farmer caught me demanded 50 Rand, told me I'll come by tomorrow. That's funny. Anyway, yeah, no, it's we finance this nonsense. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, folks. Yeah, we had 500 people tune into this one because I've been on forever. So it's a Friday. Why not? Tomorrow we've got Rugby Center. I need to look and see if they have responded to me now. Let me see. I'm looking for Flow Rugby. Let's see if they've responded. Because I wrote them. Nope, they haven't responded. Yep, they have not responded to my request. Let me go and see if they fixed it and just didn't fix it. Because I got Flow Rugby, and they have the wrong times listed for the Stormers game. They have the wrong times listed for the Lions game. So let's see what the schedule is tomorrow. All right, tomorrow is the 13th of January. It's not on Friday, so not Friday 13th. January 13. Okay. Right. Sharks at 8 o'clock. Oh, now I can do the Sharks game. They fixed it. What the heck? They fixed it. Okay, the Sharks are listed at 8 o'clock, so I can do the Sharks. I'm going to have a long day tomorrow, folks. Sharks are at 8. 10:15 are the Bulls. 12:30 are the Stormers. And 3 o'clock are man, I am going to be busy all day tomorrow. It's going to be a busy day. So I got to go back and fix it. I can't cover the Sharks tomorrow, folks. That's 5 games tomorrow. Wait, Sharks, Bulls, Stormers, Lions. Sorry, 4 games tomorrow. Woo. And I start 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't end until 5 o'clock. That's a full work day for me. My goodness. All right, well, now that they're set, they fixed it. They didn't send me a message, but they did fix it. So I have to go make one more marquee for the Sharks game tomorrow. So tomorrow, wait a second. Come on, 13 January. Sharks at 8 o'clock, and they're home. Yeah, wow, I need to fix that one against Onyx. Wow. Okay, well, I'm glad I checked that. So I got to go. None of those streams are set up on Rugby Ascendant, folks, but I'll get them set up this afternoon. I think all tax should be gone. Only VAT should exist and should be enough. I don't like VAT, Mark, because I think VAT is unfair to consumers. What do I mean by that? Well, people who buy things to survive pay the tax all the time, but the wealthy people wind up not paying nearly as much tax as everyone else. That's a hard argument to explain at the moment, but I don't like VAT. I think VAT is horrible. VAT, first off, there's no value added. It's a tax. It's a scam claiming that the thing that costs 100 euros is actually worth 100 euros. It's not. It's worth 78 euros, and 22% of that is so-called VAT, which goes to the government. And it's ridiculous. It pushes up the price of consumer goods, and it hampers economic growth and investment. It's a dumb idea that Europeans created, and it doesn't work effectively. I don't like that at all. Sharks are going to lose, says Grasshopper. No phone since brand new, but I was banned on Facebook too. Maybe they're watching me because, I don't know, is that strange? Theodorus is saying, go Lions. Okay, all right, go Lions. You don't have to pay the IRS at all if you move to True Korea. You mean North Korea? That's funny. If I win a billion lottery, I scam pyramid for underground pass. What? I don't know what that is saying. I know what that's saying. Johnny Armstrong. What? Caesar Augustus extortion. Menage a Trois says, go Stormers. And I agree. I got to get all my jerseys out tomorrow, folks. My Sharks, my Stormers, my Bulls, my Lions jerseys, and get ready for tomorrow. That's going to be interesting. I didn't realize that they fixed that. So I'm glad they fixed it because it was all messed up. They did a sloppy job. Now I know I'll have those broadcasts tomorrow. So that should be interesting. Looking forward to that. Now, what I'm torn about now, folks, is should I do a stream later on just about the Israel and the ICJ and South Africa? I think I should. I was prepared to do it, but this has gone pretty long. We're going almost 3 hours on this stream. So I'm going to have to take a break. But yeah. And tomorrow I'm going to be at it for 8 hours, right? 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 10 to 12, 10:15 to 12:15, 12:30 to 2:30, and 3 to 5. Boom, 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 boom. One game after the other. Yep. That allows governments to justify having illegal workers as part of the... Yeah, exactly. Exactly right, Keith Alderson. Thank you very much. Keith just said the obvious, which I didn't point out. And this is exactly what VAT does. It allows for the inclusion of illegal immigrants to work in an economy because they're not paying income tax. They just pay the tax at the point of sale. That's right. Also, VAT unfairly targets tourists and all these scams to get your VAT back. I'm telling you, the scam stores. I went to the UK many, many years ago, and I bought a bunch of stuff. And when I went to the airport, I claimed my VAT. And, of course, the company that gets paid, it's a private company. They take a huge chunk, like 20% of the money or 25% of the money. And I never got my check. Never got my check. 4 years later, I got the check. Another time, they put it on my credit card. And for 2 years, I didn't get the credit. Finally, over 2 years later, I got the credit from the UK. Fortunately, I still had that credit card. I never would have got the money. Wow. Bulls are playing in, I guess, who's the number 8 jersey? I haven't looked at the lineups. Let me go see if they're listed now. That's a good question. So I had contacted Flow Rugby and told them they had the wrong times for the Lions and the Stormers games, and I can't put them on my site if they're not going to be there. So let's go to News 24, which usually has at least some of the South African side lineups. So you want the Bulls lineup. They should have that. Let's go to Sport Rugby. All right. Oh, there's nothing here. Wow. Usually they have something up by now. Nothing. Let's see if this story has the lineup. Okay. Nope, no lineup there. Wow, that's weird. Let me go to IOL. Sometimes they have it. Independent Online. Although they like to put soccer top. It's not. Rugby's what matters. Okay. Oh, Mako Vunapolo has retired for international rugby. Wow, that's interesting. Stormers, Farrell. Come on. I don't see any Bulls things here. This is crazy. There's no lineups. Where are you getting your lineup at? Maybe from Twitter. Let's go to Twitter. That's where it'll be. The Bulls will have it there. Okay, Bulls. Okay, official Blue Bulls. Okay. Let's see if we got a lineup here. Okay, there's the lineup for the Bulls. Okay, in the number 8 jersey, it's Gumeda. Gerhard Steenkamp. Okay, so this is the Bulls lineup, and it's short of Springboks. Devin Williams, Sebastian de Klerk, David Creel, Harold Forster, Sergio Peterson, Johan Gussen, Emrose Papier, Pilo Gumeda, Elric Lowe, Marcel Coetzee, Reinhard Ludwig, Rohan Vermaak, Wilco Low, Jan-Hendrik Wessels, and Gerhard Steenkamp. Off the bench, it's Tian Lange, Sifewe Montezuma, Kucha Muchunu, Ron Nordkia, Dion Slabbert, Keegan Johannes, Chris Smith, and Henry Immelman. Boy, I haven't seen Henry Immelman for a while there. So, Bulls, this is 13 January. Okay, I got to save this because I need these lineups for the broadcast. All right, so that's the Bulls. Let's look at the Stormers lineup. Stormers lineup. DHL Stormers, 278,000 viewers or fans. So here's their lineup. Stormers, STORMR. Where's 13 January 24. Okay. All right. Damien Willemse, Courtnall Skozan, Suleiman Hatzenberg, Dan Duplessis, Leolan Zas, Mani Lubbock, Herschel Yankees, Haichive Daimani, Ben Jason Dixon, Dion Ferry, Ruben van Heerden, Audrey Smith, Neethling Fouché, Andre Hugo Fenta, and Steve Sitole. Off the bench, Joseph Dweba, Ali Vermaak, Brock Harris, Connor Evans, Marcel Tinnison, Namachaba, Paul Devet, and Warwick Gelant. So Gelant is back, but we're not going to see Similani. That's interesting. I don't see Similani in the lineup at all. So that's the Stormers. Let's see if we can get the Lions lineup. Lions, there we go. And here's the team announcement. So here's the Lions. Wow, that's pretty cool. South African sides are showing up. Lions, 13 January 2024. All right, so for the Lions, we still got folks here. Still a few folks hanging around. Lions, okay. We got Andres Coetzee, Steen Pinar, Eric Cornier, Reinhard Jonke, Baldwin Hansen, Jordan Hendrickson, Nico Sten, Hanru Sergel, Izan Esterhuizen, J.C. Pretorius in the starting lineup, Darian Landsberg, Etienne Oosthuizen, Conrad van Vuren, Jaco Fisagi is the captain, Morgan Naude. Off the bench, Mornay Brandon, Corny Foree, Ron Smith, Reinhard Rutz, Rohan Straioli, Travis Gordon, Johan Mulder, and Gianni Lombard. That's off the bench. That leaves the Sharks. And I always have a hard time getting the Sharks site. Whoops, that's not right. Sharks. I don't want Sale Sharks. God bless it. The Sharks. At the Sharks. I always have a hard time with that. Damn it. So I have to go to their webpage. So let's go to the Cheetahs then real quick, okay? Cheetahs. Toyota Cheetahs. And again, Section 1. Oh, they have an online program. Cool. Match day program. So here's the Cheetahs lineup on Sunday. They're playing in Amsterdam. Cheetahs. 14 January 2024. Okay, so the Cheetahs. Tafia Mafura, Munir Hatzenberg, Varde Boshoff, Reinhard Fontaine, Koen Jasper, George Lorenz, Ron Pinar, Jean-André Rudolph, Frido Olivier, Gideon van de Mave, Victor Sikikete is the captain, Rainier Bernardo, Aranos Coetzee, Louis van de Westhuizen, Skalk Ferreira. Off the bench, it's our friend Marco Janssen van Rensburg, Aluto Chakwaneni, Henkes van Wijk, Carl Wegner, Daniel Martens, Sibe Koma, Ron Kruger, and Ali Majima. So that's the Cheetahs. Now I got to go to the Sharks. Rugby.co.za because they have the Twitter link at the bottom. Sorry, my nose is itching. Okay, come to the bottom here. Come on. There's their Twitter feed. So I can never find it. Sharks Rugby, and it never shows up. So I am following it, but I can't get it. Okay, so here's their starting 15. Oh, they're going to do that crap again. Come on. There we go. Okay, Sharks. 13 January 2024. Come on. There we go. All right, the Sharks, Afide Fase, Werner Koch, Lucanio Am, Francois Fenta, Makazole Mapimpi, Kerwin Bosch, Grant Williams, Pepsi Buthelezi, Lapis Labaskakni, Tino Mavacera, Gebrand Kreubler, Corne Rao, Hanro Jacobs, Felsenbate, Oxenche. Off the bench, Kieran von Furen, Tuku Mchuno, Quasim Mona, Eben Etzebeth, James Fenter, Jaden Henriksen, Diego Apollos, and Edwin Keeter. So that's off the bench for them. So there you go. That's the starting lineup for that. Let me see the Cheetahs game match day program. Well, there it is. You click on the page. Cool. That's pretty cool. Let me show you guys this. Okay. Wow. So let me go back. Reload the page. Let me see if that'll do it. Okay, here you go. So let's show you what the Cheetahs game day program looks like. It's online, folks. I'll show you the link if you want. So you click here. There you go. A warm welcome to the round 3, round 4 match in the 2023 EPCR Challenge Cup, and a happy new year to all as we reach the business end of the tournament's pool stage. There you go. This is from Dominic McKay, chairman of the EPCR. Okay, step up, real rugby fans. Hilux. There's your players. Whoops, now it's taking a while to load. There we go. That's kind of cool. Anyway, there you go. So that's their online program, in case you didn't know about that. Okay, cool beans. All right, people dropping off now. We've been on too long. Go Lions, go Bulls. I never wrote them a thank you letter. Maybe I go to England, the airport. England is well organized. That's cool, online program. Yeah, it is. Let me give you the link to that, folks, if you want it. So game day for the Cheetahs. Since you can't be in Amsterdam to get it, here you go. That's the Cheetahs online program if you want it. So you don't have to go look for it, okay? There you go. Cool beans. All right, 2 hours and 53 minutes. Wow, just short of 3 hours. Why don't we wrap it up here, folks? 111 likes. We got some Super Chat revenue, 5 new members, courtesy Erica. And thank you all. We're on all day tomorrow, so get ready for that and watch us on Rugby Ascend. I'll put the links out when I get a chance to. You guys have a lovely day, and thank you all so much. Final touch of Martin Scorsese. Huh? Hospital's woke privilege list has angered Elon Musk. Amongst others, a leaked document revealed the new agenda to punish privilege. I think that's the John Hopkins is what you're talking about there. I think that's what it is. All right, guys. Okay. Ona Karabetsa, any predictions on the games? Okay, I won't go yet. Hang on. Don't run off yet. He asked for predictions. So what I'm going to do is instead of just making the predictions now, I'm going to go to my Super Brew and tell you what I picked when I had a clear thought of mine earlier in the week. Super Brew. Here we go. All right, my picks for upcoming games. Oh, wait, that's not it. I need to go to the wrong one. So... live and results. Okay. That's not it. Where's the captaincy? Why is this thing? Oh, here we go. Upcoming. This thing is not up to date. Today. That's not today. What the heck is going on? Is that something's wrong? Here we go. Okay. All right. Now it's great. Okay. So, that is today. We got 3 games at 3 o'clock at Newcastle, Benetton, Osprey, and Northampton. So that's coming on in an hour. I've got the Sharks by 5 over Onyx because they're at home. Then I've got the Bulls by 3 over Bristol Bears. That's a flyer for me. I'm hoping the Bulls can pull it off. I've been at that stadium in Bristol last year to watch the South Africa A-side play poorly and lose to the Bristol Bears. So hopefully the Bulls can pull it off. I've got the Stormers by 6 over Sale at home. And then I've got Montpellier by 3 over the Lions. And then the Cheetahs by 3 over Pau. So Cheetahs, Montpellier, Stormers, and Bulls, Sharks. Yeah. So anyway, that's my picks. Let's see if it holds up. Anyway, that's the plan for tomorrow. Okay, there you go. So hopefully I'll see you guys on Rugby Ascendant. So good night and have a lovely day. Thanks for sticking out. Some of you have been here the whole 3 hours. God bless you and thank you very much. And have a lovely evening, folks. And I'll debate about whether to make a video on the Israel thing. I probably should make a video and load it up on my channel rather than do another live stream. Hopefully it'll draw a lot of people. Anyway, but thank you all so much and have a good night. Take care of yourselves and be safe out there. And yeah, so, all right, cool beans. Good night, everybody. Cheers.